Apologize, we were in a study session and closed session, and we had some difficult decisions to make in that, but we apologize for being a little late. At this time, I'll reconvene the La Quinta City Council meeting for Tuesday, May 6, 2014. At this time, I'd ask that you all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Place your hand over your heart and repeat with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. First item on the agenda is public comment. Anyone wishing to speak on an item which is on the agenda, I'd ask that you please fill out a request to speak form. It's a form like this. It's at the back of the room, and give it to our city clerk. At this time, anyone wishing to speak on an item which is not on the agenda may do so. Seeing none, we'll move forward to the confirmation of agenda. Are there any changes, additions, or deletions by staff?
Yes, there are. On consent calendar, we have item number 6, which is a sub-reimbursement agreement with the Coachella Valley Associations of Governments and all Coachella Valley cities dealing with the interchange at Jefferson and I-10. Just prior to the start of the meeting, we got a letter from CVAG that had different city contribution amounts than what was in the staff report, higher amounts, and so we want to have a conversation with CVAG to understand what the change was before this item comes before you.
So you want us to continue it?
Continue that item or table it, whatever's.
It'll come back to you.
Yeah, it'll come back.
Okay.
The second item, I'd like to use this opportunity to, in the back, we have our new finance director, Rita Conrad. Some of you had the opportunity to meet her when we were doing the briefings. Rita, if you could just stand up for a minute. But she started yesterday and ended our long quest to find a new finance director, so I'd just take the opportunity to introduce her to all.
Hello, Rita.
Welcome aboard.
And I'm assuming she brought a lot of money with her when she came in?
Follow my tote right now.
Oh. Thank you. Nice to have you with us in that. Okay, council members, I want to pull item number 5 for discussion. Okay, we'll move on to announcements and presentations. We have a presentation of proclamation declaring May as Mental Health Month in the city of La Quinta. Is there somebody here that's going to accept it? Oh, all right. Sandy, nice to meet you. Okay. Okay, Mental Health Month, accepting the proclamation. We Sandy. Good. All right. Mental Health Month is critical for the well-being and vitality of our families, communities, and businesses. Mental disorders and mental health problems can affect people of all ages and backgrounds. Mental Health Month is observed each May, and I call upon everybody to help increase the awareness and understanding of mental health illness and the need for appropriate and accessible services for all people with mental illnesses. On behalf of the La Quinta City Council, it is my privilege to present you with this proclamation, and thank you and your organization for your efforts.
Thank you so much, Mayor. I greatly appreciate it. And as your first responders, the police and the fire and the paramedics, for those of us, I have 2 mentally ill sons, and it's amazing how many families are affected by this. So as we said, this is May's Mental Health Month, and I also wanted to bring attention to you, Mayor, that we're having the Desert Board of Mental Health is sponsoring an art show next Tuesday in Indio. It's called Outsiders Arts number 3. And it's amazing if you haven't ever seen people that suffer from mental illness. They're very artistic, and it's just unbelievable the things they can do. So it's next Tuesday from 11 till 2, Town Center Way in India.
Yeah.
I've only lived in the valley 30 years, I have to stop and think. But there'll be artwork on display until May the 25th. So we'd love for you to stop by and observe the different artwork. And there's also, in fact, I just was critiquing and creative writing and poems and things like that. So I thank you again, Mayor, so much.
Thank you very much for your efforts.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to the consent calendar.
Move consent calendar as amended.
It's been moved and second. All in favor? Please vote, excuse me.
Aye.
I did that the other day. Motion passes unanimous. Okay, item number 5, denial of claim for damages filed by David and Patricia Lauser. I guess when I read the information in there, I had just a little bit of a problem in that. First of all, the street there that this flooding damages came from is a city street. Some years ago, when the golf course was being reconfigured and that, the golf course people burned up that street, which affected the natural flow of the water because they didn't want the water coming on the golf course, and I can understand that. But they burned it up, which caused a damming effect for water, and that the city didn't pursue making them eliminate that damming effect and saying, hey, you're blocking off normal water flow. But we did go ahead and said, well, we'll take care of a problem by putting in a dry well. Well, they put in a dry well, and normally the dry well works all right, except for when you get something like a 100-year storm is what we got last August and that. Normally, the city, when we do things and put in retention basins and that, it's all predicated on a 100-year storm. Well, we didn't do this, and what happened is the street, the right away from the city and everything else caused a damming effect with all that water, and it went into these people's houses and that. I don't know, I guess I have a problem with saying that, you know, we need to be transparent, we need to be honest. This effect was partly due to us not taking care of the problem when the golf course people put the berm in. So I'm sorry, I would have liked to have seen us sit down with the Lausers and that and say, look, we understand what can we do to help and resolve this problem without us denying a claim that's saying we didn't have anything to do with this thing. And I just don't believe that's true. And that, so I want to be honest with our citizens, and if we make a mistake, hey, let's admit it and then take care of it and make sure that it doesn't happen again. So to me, I can't go along with approval of denial of this claim as a member of the city council. I don't know how the other council members feel, but I think that we should have worked with these people. They put up with an awful lot. Now, I don't know what kind of insurance, whether they have any insurance, because most of us don't have insurance for floods anymore and that, but I just have a problem with saying we deny it and walk away from it.
Well, I guess the more important thing is what actions can we take with Indian Springs regarding the berm? And I know that we've been in discussions regarding a fix to that issue so that we redirect that flow of water.
Yeah, we got to do something with it because it can happen again. And hopefully not in the near future and that, but in the meantime, we've got a problem that has occurred a year ago, and apparently we're just walking away from it.
Mr. Mayor?
I just have a problem.
You know, this is an item, it doesn't sound like this is on, but this is an item where a claim has been made. We could schedule this for a closed session to allow the council to talk about it you know, in a closed session setting, and hear, you know, because in part, if the damage is caused by the damming on private property, from a legal perspective, that may not lead to liability from the city, but you may want to just have that, take that into consideration, that you could certainly schedule it for
I think we
closed
should
session.
do that.
Yeah, I do.
That,
I don't have a problem doing that, but would we also know at that meeting, then we'd have recourse with the golf course that they created this damage?
Well, I think Tim could provide the backup for the issue, the information. I think Tim has quite a bit of information about the berming
Yeah.
situation, so I think he could provide that information.
Well, I know Tim has been working on it and that, but we don't seem to get any headway of resolving the problem and that. And who's to say that we're not gonna get another summer storm like we had last August and that?
Well-
I just feel badly for the people that
Well, I
are
think-
involved with this
we
issue.
agree,
I
I think.
think we all feel, having had the experience of being flooded twice here in the desert, it's very ugly
Yeah.
to go through that. So I can appreciate every ache and pain that they went through, so I
But-
think that we should schedule this for closed session.
I agree.
Yeah, but what we need to do is address the issue. It's on the consent calendar. Do we?
You don't
Do
have
we
to
wanna
take any
continue
action
it?
on it. We can just continue that matter and have a closed session on it, and then we can decide where to go from there.
Okay. Then I'll
We need a
entertain
motion
a.
to continue it now.
No.
We just not do
Okay.
anything about it. I do have a request to speak. Dave? And give us your name and address for the record. You've done it before, but do it again.
I'm Dave Losser, and I reside at 79815 Horseshoe Road. And I was totally prepared to make a fool of myself, but after hearing this, I'm gonna just reserve and work with the city council. So I'm available to talk to you, to try and remedy this. It's been going on for 16 years. And I spoke with you last time, and it's passionate for me, because every time I come down and I think, oh, am I gonna get nailed with water again? And it has happened, I think about 6 or 7 times, but it's just gone in the garage. The water just backs up. I talked to Neil Finch just an hour ago. He wants it fixed.
He wants it fixed.
He wants it fixed.
And does he want the city to fix it?
Yes.
But he wants us to fix their golf course.
Again, you're smarter than I am as a
Okay.
collective group. All I wanna do is not have to put up sandbags
I
from the
agree.
city. And my wife and my neighbors, they come to my rescue, and it doesn't have to be. That berm does not have to be there. If that swell is just, say, like 3 or 4 feet wide, and it can just flow. And it would, once or twice a year, it will flood. It's kind of the norm now. And it won't back up. You've all seen the photos. And I appreciate you guys, I really do. And I don't wanna lose $18,000 to replace, because if it happens again, it goes in there. In fact, it almost happened like a month or 2 later, when it started storming and so forth, and if it just hits right, there's a reason why this whole valley has a wash system. That water, have you ever seen that water come off those mountains? Oh my gosh. And there's a reason why homes have been built up 20 feet in the past.
There's a few.
The water happened for hundreds of years. And I know mine is just a little simple problem, but it's my problem. And I know it can be remedied very easily if we just get the city and Neil Finch to agree. And that's my hope and prayer that, it's kind of, I took Neil, he took me aback because he said it was my fault that I bought the lot from the golf course. And I'm thinking, really? So anyway, just try and remedy the situation. Again, I would like to be reimbursed. I don't want to do legal. And I don't want to have to sue Neil. But you guys should have the power to be able to do it. He agreed. Tim calms me down, because I'm thinking this summer it will be fixed. I do have the house up for sale by owner, but nobody wants to buy it because they don't want to buy a problem that the water won't flow. And even Neil told me, says it'll close the golf course one hole for a day, and then it soaks in. But the water does not, the percolation, it just does not sink in that fast. It runs. So if you could just help me, if you would just reimburse me for my damage that I had, I'm not padding it. I've thrown out stereo equipment, clothes, all this kind of stuff that I can't use anymore because it's got stains. I've redone the cabinets, all that kind of stuff. I'm a State Farm agent. I don't pad losses. So if you could just see to just reimburse me for just the damages. If you want me to be in a closed session, whatever, we'll work with you. Legal is not the way to go, sorry. But just, I would like to see if the city, I pay taxes, you are the government, you are the people, just help us out on this and get it done. We'll be happy to be residents for another, let's see, 98, another 16 years, God willing. So, thank you, I've gone over my 3 minutes, thanks, thank you.
Thank you, Dave.
Mr. Mayor, one thing I want to interject in the discussion. Checked with Tim after our meeting this morning, and the survey of the area has already been completed, and the design on the improvements we're going to be starting next week. So it's not that nothing's taking place on this. We've heard loud and clear. The design is underway, and once we get that done, then we can go out to bid for some portion of those improvements.
Well, we know things were moving forward in that, but, you know, this happened last August.
Correct.
So it's taken this long to get through this, and I'm just saying, you know, let's get it done. Okay. All right, that takes care of the consent calendar. Okay, we'll move on to our business session, and we need an approval for the art purchase agreement with Marie Barba for the design and installation of a sculpture at the Eisenhower Drive and Cali Sinola roundabout. Staff report, please, Edie.
Good afternoon, Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council. This item before you has been an item that we've been working on for some time. When the roundabout was completed last year, we brought forward an RFP, which you approved, to go out and solicit an artist to put an art piece in that roundabout. And at the time, the mayor had made the comment, well, you might be able to find something at the art festival as well. And we said, you know what, we'll take a look at that. But oftentimes it's very difficult to find exactly the right piece. We might find the right artist, but not the right piece. And so we went ahead and because it was a very specialized area and a large piece of art, we went ahead and sent out the artwork, and we included some of those artists that were participating in the art festival that did specific work with Native American artists. We sent the RFP out to about 20 Native American sculptors that worked in and all over the area and in the West primarily. We received 3 back, and the Community Services Commission interviewed those 3 and had a selection, and the person they selected is here this evening. Her name is Marie Barbera. Marie has done a lot of work throughout the area, in Colorado, in Ohio, in Arizona, large Native American pieces. And the piece that she brought tonight, there is a maquette right here in front, and it is of 2 Cahuilla Indian, a mother and a daughter holding baskets. And at the time that she was talking to the commission, she was talking about that there would be a lot more detail integrated into the artwork. The faces would be completed, the baskets would be original Native American style baskets. And so she had done some of those work. The details had not all been ironed out, but she had that work with her. There were, as I said, there were 3 artists, one of which the artist was the person who did the Point Happy piece, Felicia, that you've seen there at Point Happy, and she also does beautiful Native American work. At any rate, the commission selected and recommended Maria Barbera to bring forth to you this evening. We have an agreement put together should you decide to move forward with her. And she is here along with her husband who helps her with the projects to answer any questions she might have. So that concludes my staff report. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have regarding this piece. And that concludes my,
Thanks, Edie.
That's it. Thank you.
Questions to staff? Linda?
It's 7 by 3, 7 foot tall by
Yes.
3. Is there any kind of base to elevate it up on? Is that 4 by 4?
yes. And we would be working with the Public Works Department to determine just how large that base needs to be and to make sure that that's safe and that the placement of that is in the proper place for that location.
Because it sounds like 7 foot is tall enough, but if you're positioning it in between these palm trees, I don't want it to be dwarfed, and I
Right.
feel like it needs to be positioned in
behind that wall, too.
Right, so it's
And
got to
that
get
it's
up
gonna be
high
on a
enough to see it.
pedestal.
Yes.
We just met with Tim, and he showed us the layout of how
Okay.
the configuration of how it's going to set.
Perfect, very good. I
I
love
think
it.
that the visibility of being able to see
Mhm.
the art piece. I don't want to have something like what we have on Kaleo Day, where we have the art piece way back and nobody can see. So
No, we agree.
We want it to be visible so that everybody has the opportunity to enjoy the beauty of it.
That's right, and we walked out, as a matter of fact, earlier this afternoon, I actually met with the artists and we walked out to the site and really looked at what might even be the best place for that, where it could be seen, even a few feet out from the palm trees, where you could see it. You'll get about a 180 view of it as you go in the roundabout. The wall, you won't see it from the wall, but when you come around the roundabout, you'll see it from about 180 degrees.
Well, I think it's beautiful, and it's just very welcoming, very family-oriented. It's a great representation of our heritage in the Cove, and I thank you for stepping up and offering up your expertise.
Any other questions of staff? Lee?
Mr. Mayor, thank you. The outside of this, the material, I should say, for the outside of this piece, will it be in that, if it is vandalized, it can be cleaned?
Yes, absolutely. And it's similar to other bronze pieces we have. It's very similar to the Point Happy, the bronze at Point Happy.
Okay.
So if that gives you an idea of that. And we haven't really had those types of pieces vandalized, pieces that are darker in color, which this is going to be. It's going to be in bronze and copper patinas. It's actually going to be quite beautiful. And we have less trouble with those kinds of things than the lighter colors that we have, like
Okay. Just, with the kids we have in the Cove, it can happen. And
Certainly.
I'm sure it may happen.
But it will also have a,
Bronze theft anywhere.
It happens. I'll just leave it at that.
it does happen, and it will
vandalism
have
happens.
a graffiti-proof coating.
Okay.
Maybe we'll put electric field around it.
Well, I just want to make sure, one, that if it happens, it can be
Certainly.
cleaned up relatively easy with
Absolutely.
the surface
Yeah.
you're using. And then, is the art such that, the drivers going through the roundabout need to be focused also on the traffic?
Mhm.
And I don't know the detail on this and the extent that they will be distracted from the traffic. And is there so much detail in this piece that it would take away the focus from, driving around the roundabout and any traffic issues?
We don't believe that it is. We think it's going to be large enough that you can see the level of detail
Okay.
without having to slow down. There was a piece of art that was submitted, and that was exactly one of the questions we had. The level of detail was too small, and people would need to, that would be problematic. So
Take care.
I believe that's why your commission chose this particular piece.
Okay. All right. Thank you. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Any other questions? Jerry?
Yes, I have the same question as Lee. However, I'll maybe try to phrase it in a different way because I go through the roundabout several times a day. No, that's lying. I go through it several times a week, and I love it. And I know lots of people in the Cove that will not use it because they're afraid of it. And that's very unfortunate.
Yes.
But I can tell you that it takes approximately 3.5 seconds to go 180 degrees. So you're going just halfway around it. So, and believe me, you are not going to look at a piece of art when you do that. You're going to follow the course because you've got to get in and out because the cars that are coming along are expecting you to do that. Now, there's a lot of times during the day where you're certainly alone. But mostly when the use is at early in the morning, and again at 5 or 6 o'clock at night, 4 o'clock it starts, it's pretty heavy traffic there. And you don't want them looking from a half mile away with putting their eyes on a piece of artwork. So unfortunately, from the first discussion that we've had on this to today, I have completely changed my mind and gone back to what Ron Perkins said to us many, many, many times. Why we don't have artwork at 52 and Jefferson is because of the distraction that it has for drivers. And this is such a small roundabout, and it works so well. I cannot see putting $85,000, even though we're using funds that cannot be used for anything else. We could not pay for any water damages or any other, we couldn't do anything with it except buy art. And I understand that we also have to rotate that money, you know, on a particular time frame. But I am just, the thought of trying to explain to a lot of people in the community who don't like the roundabout why we're putting another $85,000 into a piece of artwork there is going to be a real challenge for me, and I'm just not going to be able to support this at all. So, and I'm sorry about that, but that's where it came down. Now, what I do think, my mind went to a living artwork. And what would that possibly be? That would be artwork that was, if we could convince the city attorney that it is artwork, it would be a flower garden that would have a year maintenance. Every year would have to either be replanted or just continue to be, if you will, structured in a way that it came out as artwork, but it would be flowers. And I have seen a lot of gardens that have been considered art gardens. So, but other than that, there's just no way that I can support this.
Well, I think Traditions does an excellent job at their entrance with the flower gardens.
Yeah.
Just beautiful.
And the other two pieces that we have, the one down at, what's the name of that project?
Point Happy?
Point Happy. I'm sorry, it's age. That was about this, it was 95,000.
That's right, smaller.
However, Point Happy generated Art and Public Places funds, just as Andalusia generates. And we used that with developers as a tool to entice them to be a part of the community.
Brick and Ranch.
And so it was actually their contributions that went into the fund that went back out to pay for the artwork. This piece, did the city pay the Art and Public Places fees? We must have.
Well, it's the pool of available funds to be used, and either you have it with a
I
developer
understand
or.
that, but I want to know, when we built the roundabout, did we pay Art and Public fees as a city? No, it wasn't part of any of the fees that we paid. So, and what was the cost of the roundabout? Pretty expensive.
Which one?
The one
On Jefferson, or the one you were talking about?
No, the one on
Sonoma?
Eisenhower.
The total cost was a little over 800,000.
800,000.
And maybe about 850.
Yeah.
But
And I love it.
We did use APP funds though for the wall already on that and set up the lighting and everything in anticipation of the art piece. So there is some APP funds.
I think one of the things that, and I don't, you can sit down. I think that one of the things that's concerning me as I drive around, you know, I live up there and I love it up there, and I would love to see, flowers in this place, if you will. But I'm a little disappointed even in the signs that we have put up. That's, that I think the Historical Society was partly involved with that. Because you can't read all of the letters. You can't read La, the L in La Quinta, and I don't know whether you folks noticed that as you're driving around too. But my comment was it's such a shame that we have good intentions. The blue signs that we put up,
Yeah.
they're terrible. They're awful.
I said that at the time.
And it's, you know, and I don't wanna feel that way about this piece afterwards, saying, why did we do that? So I'm just kind of maybe being a little more critical. I think the piece is charming, and certainly it will be even more charming when they have faces. So no, and I'm very pleased with the piece, but not there, so that's my comment.
We've been known to move art pieces around too.
Yeah, we have. But we don't wanna do that too often.
Okay. If there's no more, I do have a couple of requests to speak, so if you would do that, I call your name if you come up to the podium, and try and keep it within 3 minutes. Give us your name and address for the record. Edward Armendariz.
Hi, I'm Edward Armendariz and I live on 51800 Avenida Montezuma, and I represent the La Quinta Cove Neighborhood Association. We've really been in favor of having art at that roundabout since there was the idea of a roundabout, and we really wanted it to be tied into the Native American heritage and Kauai Indians, and we really like the piece. I think it would really class up the neighborhood. I think it would be just perfect location for it. If anything, I think maybe it would help slow people down when they move around it. And I used to live in West Hollywood where we put in roundabouts and we put in a big fountain, and people pretty much want to get where they're going. They're not driving in the car looking at art mostly. And I think it helps slow traffic down a little bit, but in general I think people want to go where they're going. I'm not sure if that's, and in Europe, everywhere there's roundabouts and there's always art at the roundabouts. So anyway, we really like it a lot, and we hope you decide. We really recommend getting it.
Good, thank you, Edward. Linda.
Mayor Adolph, council members, Linda Williams, 52519 Avenida Juarez, here representing La Quinta Historical Society. And I'll make a quick comment, Terry, and just let you know that we have not had any negative comments about the signs. I can sort of see what you're saying, but for the most part, we've had only positive comments and many donations toward the cost, because people just appreciate what we've done. You know, in fact, someone said to me, they didn't even know who did it. They were, how did this happen? So rest assured, the community there's been a positive, at least I haven't talked to any negative people about the signs. I'm here representing La Quinta Historical Society again to voice our support for this piece of artwork by Marie Barbera. We are very pleased that it connects with the history of the area, and that it's a beautiful depiction of a native Kauai woman and child. So we're very happy about that. We think it'll be stunning in that location. The one comment that I would make about this roundabout versus Jefferson, and this is a heavily trafficked, roundabout, but the speed's a lot lower. Jefferson, they're doing like 60 miles an hour sometimes up Jefferson. So I kind of get what you talked about. I do think this is a little slower, and I do think, especially if you're approaching from the top of the cove, you'll see it hopefully a long time before you get into the roundabout. And I think, as Edward said, I think just the fact that it's such a beautiful piece of art, people are very reverential around artwork, and I think people do slow down as kind of an appreciation and not to dismiss the importance of having that. I think the Cove is a very artistic, there are a lot of artists that live up there, and I think people really like the idea that artwork is synonymous with the Cove, and this, I think, as Linda said, is a beautiful representation, and I think it's, it's very warm and welcoming. So I hope that you will approve this piece to go into that roundabout. Thank you.
Thanks, Linda.
I can also see directions, go to the statue and 2 streets past the statue, make a right, or turn right at the statue, or it'll become iconic in terms of a directory of sorts as well.
Not at night when it's dark.
That's going to be lit.
Yeah,
It's
but
lit.
2 streets down won't be.
Well,
You can never find the 2 streets down.
I don't know. I think this council has always been attuned to culture, bringing cultural facilities and things into our community, and that and whatever we can do to enhance our community in cultural aspects, I think is our responsibility to do what we possibly can just for our city. And this is long term. Our children grow up seeing these things, and they take advantage of it, I think, as part of their culture. And we see that in our schools, like the Ben Franklin School, which we're deeply involved with performing arts and things like that. And I think we see it in our high school, in La Quinta High School, of what they're doing in enhancing the cultural activities within our community. And I think that's all part of our life that we live here and we enjoy. So I support it. I think it's just another way of showing our community and getting them involved with cultural items and things like monuments and activities that promote the development of artwork. So, with
Ready
that-
for a motion? Christie, did you want to say?
Yeah.
Yeah, if you don't mind.
Yes, Christie,
Okay.
please.
Edie, is this on the north side of the roundabout, or the oval about? It's on the south side? Okay, all right. It's gonna be an absolutely beautiful piece. My first look at what was in the staff report, which is emulating this, there weren't any facial features. And so I told our city manager it looked a little spooky, but then after having read that you are, of course, going to do that in other detail, I just think it's gonna be outstanding and beautiful, and I appreciate your efforts towards that.
Okay, thank you.
I'd love to entertain a motion. Yes, I move approval of an art purchase agreement with Marie Barbera for the design and installation of a sculpture at Eisenhower Drive and Calle Sinaloa Roundabout, and authorize the city manager to execute the agreement.
Been moved in second. Please vote. Motion passes 4-1. All right.
Thank you.
With Councilmember Henderson voting no.
Yep. We'll move on to our study session, and I've been notified it's part 1. And the first item on the study session is the 2013 annual police report. Chris, are you giving something, or Andy? You're gonna.
Yes, sir. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, and members of the community that are here as well. Very pleased to speak with you, hopefully very briefly tonight, at the request of the city manager. I know you have a long agenda and much to discuss, but first of all, I want to thank Lieutenant Dave Walton, as well as CSO Jessica Herrera, who couldn't make it, but Lieutenant Walton and Jessica Herrera did an excellent job, I think, in this year's annual report. Last year, we produced an annual report that didn't come close to the quality of the product that these folks were able to prepare this year, so definitely want to thank Lieutenant Walton and CSO Herrera. So, yeah, the cover page is right up there on the PowerPoint, but they did a great job this year. Next slide. So the La Quinta Police Department, as you all know, is proudly served by the Riverside County Sheriff's Department. Our sheriff, Stan Sniff, grew up out here in the valley, went to school in Indio, worked for Coachella Police Department before he transitioned over to the Sheriff's Department. And I know that the sheriff has a special place in his heart for the city of La Quinta, obviously, as well as the men and women of the thermal station that serve the city of La Quinta are proud to do so. So proudly served by the Riverside County Sheriff's Department. Next slide. Obviously, myself and Lieutenant Walton are your representatives. I serve as the commander of the Thermal Sheriff Station. Not only do we service the contract city of La Quinta, but we service the contract city of Coachella, as well as the unincorporated communities from Washington Street all the way nearly to Desert Center. But in my role as the captain of the Sheriff Station, I do serve as your chief of police and proud to do so. Lieutenant Walton is a dedicated lieutenant dedicated to the city of La Quinta, and he serves as the assistant manager, or I'm sorry, the assistant police chief, as I know that you are aware. Next slide. Some general information, you all know the population and the area of coverage. Last year's police budget was about $13.2 million. That generates about 61 police officers that work for the city of La Quinta. By comparison, the city of Indio has 64 sworn peace officers. So this city is on par with that number of staff. The police to residents per 1,000 ratio is 1.6, which is very high for the valley here. One of the highest level ratios of officers per 1,000, so you all can be proud of that.
The average is 1 for 1,000? Or what's the average?
The average amongst the other agencies, I'm not sure. I've got some data I could give you. An anomaly is Indian Wells. I think they're at 2.3 per 1,000. Palm Desert's about 1.6. The city of Indio is less than 1. The city of Coachella is about 0.8. So I don't know what the average is. The sheriff is going in the unincorporated areas from a staffing level. Our staffing dropped from 0.75 per 1,000, so less than half of the staffing of the city of La Quinta. Dropped from that, has now gone up to 1 per 1,000, and the Board of Supervisors has established a ratio of 1.2 per 1,000. So if we could get up to 1.2 per 1,000 in the unincorporated area, we're still going to be much less staffed than the city of La Quinta. So your staffing is high as it should be, as it should be.
As we chose.
Yes. Next slide. Okay, this slide's good. The city, just some quick numbers. The city pays for, by contract, 150 patrol hours a day. And that essentially equates to 15 10-hour shifts. Generally speaking, our deputies work 10-hour shifts. So essentially what we have out there on the streets on patrol in black and whites, handling calls for service, are 5 deputies per shift. And then the city also contracts for additional resources above and beyond that. So for example, Lieutenant Walton is an additional lieutenant that the city chose to hire because you wanted some additional attention and service. We have motor officers that are an additional contract. We've got special enforcement team officers and business team, district team officers. There's 7 of those that contract or that concentrate on problem areas or interacting with the business community and so forth. So in addition to those 15 patrol officers per day, the city has also contracted for enhanced police services above and beyond that really support all the patrol folks on a daily basis. And so that's what drives up the officers, the total number of officers to about 61. Next slide. Calls for service. The La Quinta Police Department handled right about 25,000 calls for service and file numbers that were generated. So about 14,000 calls where people called 911 and or called the non-emergency number to request services. And then an additional 11,000 or so self-initiated file numbers, whether they be traffic citations or a business check or other activity. So a significant amount when you think about it. I mean, I think most folks in the community think it's a pretty quiet area. It's the desert, it's retirement community, so, you know, maybe 20 calls a day, I don't know. But we're really going to about 68 to 69 calls for service or incidents that we're handling, whether they be self-initiated or generated by a citizen on a daily basis. Next slide. Overall, in a nutshell, this is the Part 1 crime report. This is the report that we send to the FBI every year, and the FBI produces a report in about September. In September of this year, they'll produce a report for 2013. Well, I gave you the 2013 data, and essentially crime is down. Part 1 crimes are down 13.9% from 2012. Both violent crime and property crime are down across the city of La Quinta. So good news for us. Next. Just wanted to also touch on this as sort of a high point for 2013. Every year you all attend the annual Peace Officer and Public Safety Awards ceremony that's held, last year was in Indian Wells at the Hyatt. These are the 2 officers that were recognized representing the city of La Quinta. 2 of the best deputies that we have in the station, and that's why they were handpicked for these assignments. Corporal Don Olson, who's assigned to our traffic team, does a great job. Really was a leader amongst the team there, and a leader amongst even his supervisor. For a while, we had a supervisor in our traffic unit with limited traffic experience, was not a motorist himself in the past, and Corporal Don Olson stepped up and really provided some leadership. We've since then transitioned a new supervisor into our traffic unit. His name's Chris Frederick. Chris is a former motor, actually, in La Quinta when he was a deputy sheriff, and he's stepped up to the plate as well. But Don Olson did a great job for us last year. And then Corporal Josh Ryanbolts, who's assigned to our business district unit. Our business district unit is comprised of 2 deputy sheriffs who focus on nothing but the 111 business corridor, as well as Old Town and the businesses in Old Town. They deal with trespassers, they help deal with homeless, they investigate shoplifting, crimes, and commercial burglaries, and they really sort of try and establish relationships with the business community. And Josh Reinboltz did a great job last year, and that's why he was recognized at this event. Next one. So our goals for 2014 in a nutshell, 4 quick bullet points here, but we're striving to maintain that low crime rate. There's a ton of variables that go into the low crime rate, and if I had the magic formula captured, I could sell it for $1 billion, right? But so we think increased police officers is a part of it. A better economy certainly helps, less strain on folks that are less tempted to commit theft and so forth. But we're the beneficiaries this year for whatever reason of the low crime rate. We're going to do what we can to keep that down. Although, we do have a property crime problem in the city. Our burglary numbers are high, our theft numbers are high, because when you have nice things, people like to come take them from you, and there's a lot of people in La Quinta that have nice things. So that's our first goal. We're also going to strive to maintain and manage our response times. We did see a slight increase in response times last year. We're trying to put our fingers on exactly what the culprit is, but thankfully this year so far, year to date, we have seen a decrease in our priority 1 response times. So that's good news, and stay tuned. We're also going to strive to build and nurture relationships. I think we've got a really good relationship with the city manager, with city staff. We've got a really good connection with the other department heads and department representatives at the city, but we're also reaching out to the community. Lieutenant Walton and his staff attended a Coffee with the Cop event this past weekend in Old Town. That was a great success. We got great feedback from the community and from the officers, so we're going to continue to do things like that. We also put on an annual bicycle rodeo that I know was attended by some of you last year, and so these are the types of things that we're going to continue to do to outreach. And lastly, we're going to strive to innovate. So we don't want to be, doing the same thing for the same reasons. But if you all have innovative ideas, if the community has innovative ideas that they care to offer that we haven't thought of, please share them, and we'll do what we can to see if they make sense and are viable moving forward. So with that, I thought the last slide was gonna be questions, but I forgot about this slide. Next Tuesday, we're gonna have a memorial run. It's the second annual memorial run for Deputy Bruce Lee, who was murdered 11 years ago in the city of La Quinta. We're gonna run from the Memorial Highway sign on 111 and Jefferson to the memorial sign at the other end of the city, across from the Cliff House, and then we're gonna run down here to the Civic Center Park to the Memorial Rock and place a wreath there. So you're all welcome to attend if you'd like. It's a very informal ceremony. We haven't organized a big dog and pony show at this point. We just want to take a moment out of our day to remember Bruce. So
You'll have traffic control while you're doing this, won't you?
we're gonna run on the sidewalk.
Oh.
We're gonna run on the sidewalk.
On the
But we're gonna
sidewalk.
have a couple chase vehicles just in case. You know, some of us are less fit than others. So
Yeah.
we'll see.
We don't want any traffic problems.
No, sir. Yeah, I agree. I agree.
All on the same page.
No, that's true. That's true. There's some rabbits out there. It's been a good event. That picture there was from Manny Villegas. We just did a run for him. He was also killed. He was killed in 2007 in a head-on collision in Thermal. And so we ran from the sheriff's station out to the crash site, which is about almost 6 miles. We did that a month and a half ago.
Did you do that?
I did it, yeah. Lead from the front. Lead from the front. So I was very sore, but we've actually got 4 deputies that have been killed out of the old Indio station and Thermal station. And if you haven't been to the station recently, we have, since the grand opening, we have established what we call a Hall of Heroes. There's a big, long main hallway that sort of runs through the middle of the building. And we've got portraits of all 4 officers that were killed in the line of duty up there with a nice painting that says Hall of Heroes, and some other memorabilia, some shadow boxes and stuff set up. So try to remember those officers that have been killed out of our area. So with that, we'll take any questions. Between Lieutenant Walton and I, I'm sure we can give you an answer.
Mostly what I'm seeing here is a sense of compliments for what you brought before us. And I love this document. I put sticky notes instead of writing notes in it when I didn't want to write all over
Give me
it.
some warning.
So I'm going to leave mine here at City Hall so other folks can pick it up and read it. I think it's terrific.
Yes.
Really, really pleased with that. But I will ask you, what are you doing about the bicyclists that are using up one full lane on Saturdays in the Cove?
I've heard periodic complaints about them.
Well, consider this
Another one?
periodic.
Okay. We haven't dedicated any traffic folks recently to address them specifically.
Last Saturday, they took up, wasn't it Saturday? Because I saw you right afterwards. Where were we? Yeah, where were we? I'm pretty sure it was Saturday. And they were riding 6 abreast, and then at times they would just, they didn't even bother to count them. They just.
It was the birthday party day.
Okay, so it was Saturday.
Yeah, I know that we've gone out there in the past, and I think Dave wants to say something here, apparently.
Well, no, I just wanted to back you up.
Yeah. So I know we've gone out there in the past. You know, we try to balance public safety and enforcement of the law.
You know,
with,
I had to take my driver's test twice last year, so I know for a fact that bicyclists are supposed to stop at stop signs.
They are.
And
There is no law that allows them to roll through a stop sign. There's other states that allow you to roll through if you're on a bike and it's clear, but not California. So if Dave has something else to offer, we'll look at it again and probably send some folks out there if you think that's a recommendation.
Well, I would mention that the traffic team is putting together a program because of a response to a 2 ago council meeting, or maybe it was 3 ago, where the issue is out there. And so what I've directed them to do is I really feel it's important that we educate before we cite. So they're in the process, not a coffee with a cop kind of thing, but I want them to go to some of these gathering places because it seems to be the people in the very serious about biking, if you will. That this isn't mom and dad out for a casual ride pulling the child in the car. These are the bicyclists that are going 3 and 4 abreast that are kind of pedaling for all they're worth. For exercise and things like that. So what we want to do is go to these groups and let them know before we drop the hammer that this is going to happen. So we need them to be a little more courteous.
Well, and that's the word right there. I don't really expect them to stop at stop signs, but when they're taking up a full lane, then they don't stop at stop signs. You get double angry. But I don't expect them, especially on Bermuda's, because it's only the one-way traffic coming into that. So, but there is absolutely no courtesy.
Right.
Absolutely none. I mean, they get out there and they just say, you go around us. However you get to where you're going, it's fine. But we're going to stay right here.
We definitely want to. There are those that are courteous, so we don't want to paint them all with that brush, or at least I won't. But there are some that are actually abiding by the law and trying to be courteous. But you get a couple that act up and they ruin it for the whole bunch.
16 to 25 bike riders.
Yeah.
It was a big group that was coming down.
This is a constant process. It's probably like having toddlers. We'll go out there and talk to the bike clubs again, and then we'll have to be doing the same thing in another year. So.
All right.
I have a question, Tom.
Good.
Okay.
Christie?
So I like this educate before you cite. I just think that's really great. So when I'm pulled over the next time for speeding, I'm going to tell the nice person, be it a he or she, that you said, actually he did,
Yes.
but does that work?
It was in the handbook when you got your license. That was the education for driving.
All right.
The cyclists don't have to go get the.
Yeah. I really don't have a question, but I do have a comment. This is, I'm going to do the same thing as Terry. I'm going to keep this in my office. It's really well put together. I appreciate all your efforts on this. It's actually an easy read, and I love graphs. I mean, I just think those are it's colorful and easy to read and very informational. The coffee with a cop. What a great idea. I don't know who put that together, but I understand it was very successful. And I've heard from some of the residents and people in the community that they thought it was informational and really
Lieutenant Walton's been really
great.
taking the charge on that. He's, I rely on him quite a bit to interact with city staff here at City Hall. I know you all see him at every council meeting, but he's really taken the bull by the horns with that and made it his baby.
Well, I appreciate it, and it's very well appreciated, and I hope your attendance continues to be good, but that's just a great idea.
Thank you.
That's all. Thank you.
Good. Lee, comment?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A couple of questions. On some of your stats in this report, one of them, you talk about the 3-year property crime comparison report, and if you want, it's on page 7. You're looking at burglary, and you're looking at the larceny theft. I don't know the technical differences between the two, but my question is, on the burglary and the larceny theft, is most of that in the 111 corridor?
No, that's spread throughout the city.
Pretty well spread throughout the whole city?
And I know there was a question about larceny theft. What actually is it? It's any theft. So it could be theft of something very expensive or a petty theft. So it's any theft. And then the burglary numbers include both commercial and residential burglary.
Okay.
I know there was the city manager mentioned there was a question about that.
Right.
So this is inclusive of the entire city. Anecdotally, I would say, we get a lot of shoplifters and commercial
Right.
burglaries
That's what I
that
was
are
wondering.
classified as burglaries on the 111 business corridor. Say somebody goes into Walmart with intent to commit a
Right.
theft, that constitutes a commercial burglary, and it would be statted as a burglary.
As a burglary?
Yes.
Okay. Well, without getting into too technical, I mean, it's good to see the numbers going down. And I would like to give you a call and go out, and I haven't yet to go to the thermal station, so I would like
Oh,
to
yes.
make an appointment to come out
Absolutely.
there and ask some more detailed questions on this. The school resource officers, I wanted to ask, on those, I think they do a great job at the high school and the middle schools. Do they have programs with youth other than, quote, enforcement? I mean, are there other programs that they have with the youth out there?
We're getting ready to gear up for our annual cadet program that occurs over the summer.
Okay.
And Dave, 3 weeks or 2 weeks?
3 weeks long.
It's a 3-week program. 50 students have to apply, and they're hand selected, and not everybody gets in. We try and, this isn't for wayward youth. This is for youth that have shown some initiative, that have something going for them. So it's really a sort of a reward, a benefit. But so we do have that program that's been going on for the last few years. Really successful program. Our SROs they put that program on.
Great.
And so a great program. So that's one. We do also have the Explorer program at the station. We've got, I think, 26 Explorers, most from La Quinta. We're trying to recruit from the other end of my other areas as well, Coachella and the unincorporated area, but most of them are from La Quinta. Matter of fact, we had Explorer of the Year this year at our Sheriff's Department Awards ceremony. And I should also mention, we won not only Explorer of the Year, we won Reserve of the Year, and we also won Volunteer of the Year for Joanne Hayes, who's a La Quinta volunteer. So Thermal Station cleaned house in those 3 volunteer categories, including Explorer of the Year. A girl by the name of Madison Meyer, her parents were there. They were crying, and it was a very good event. But we have some really good squared away kids out here.
Well, and that leaves my last, not as much a question, but just reading your 2014 goals that you have listed here, it's really impressive to see your community involvement. And these awards, you really show that community involvement that you guys have here in La Quinta. And I really appreciate what you're doing from that aspect of it, to be involved in the community, not just from an enforcement standpoint, but education as well as with the youth to help them see what you guys do from a better standpoint.
Thank
And
you.
so just want to say great job. Thank you.
Thank you.
I do have a couple questions. On the pages 29 and 30, the Narcotics Task Force, there's 2 separate charts. There's the La Quinta stats, and there's also the CV Narcotics Task Force stats. And I'm not quite sure what the difference is on all the narcotic Cs between the 2 pages and the 2 graphs and what that represents. Is it, stuff seized in La Quinta alone?
So we asked them to break it out, La Quinta specific, and then the other stats should be just team
The
stats, so the
entire
entire, the
task force.
totality of the team. So our officers, we have 2 officers assigned to task forces. One assigned to the narcotic task force and one assigned to the gang task force. And they're multi-jurisdictional task forces. I think there's 8 officers assigned to the gang task force. I think we've got 6 on the narcotic task force. And they go all over the place. So they might be in Palm Springs doing an investigation one day. The next day they might be here in La Quinta. And so the benefit is when there's an investigation going on in La Quinta, we get all of those officers and the full weight of that whole team to bear.
Okay.
So, it's an opportunity for us to interact with other police agencies and make sure we've got a really special thing going on out here in the Coachella Valley. Once a month, I participate in what we call CV Chiefs, where all the chiefs of police get together. I sit on the board of the gang task force. I sit on the board of their narcotic task force as your representative. And the other chiefs of police from the rest of the county, the west end of the county, don't have the connections that we have out here. I think it's just because we're in this isolated valley, but the Palm Springs Chief of Police, Cathedral City Chief of Police, Rich Twist and Indio, all of us get together and once a month and talk about these issues, how we can better manage these teams. So it's a unique, it's a unique relationship. Sorry to go on.
So that's all right, that's helpful. So it's valley-wide, so out of the 1.3 street value, we have about 300,000 that you seize in La Quinta. Okay. The other question is obviously the the calls for service and the response time. Remind me again when the thermal station opened?
February, I believe, 2012.
12 it was?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we've been there just over 2 years now.
Because I think that's what stood out to me, and I'm glad to see that was one of the goals, is the response time. It's taken longer, and that was one of our concerns when it went to thermal, although you're closer to
Yeah.
certain parts of La Quinta at the
Yeah.
thermal station. But with the substations going away, what was that going to do to
Yeah.
your ability to get there when needed?
So far, and I know that's a very good point, and I know you've expressed that concern before, and we're very sensitive to that issue. So far this year, our response times to priority 1 calls is 5.47 minutes. So even faster than the 2012 numbers. Now, knock on wood, hopefully, we'll drive that down. What happens with these response times are, you have these outliers. So we have a sample of all these calls that we go to, and if we have a priority 1 call for whatever reason, perhaps it's not even dispatched properly, there's some error, and it takes us 20 minutes to get there, that throws everything off. So maybe what I should do is capture the 80th percentile, the middle of the distribution, and give you those numbers, because they're probably a lot closer. There's probably not, and I haven't done it, frankly, for multiple reasons, but so far, knock wood, this year our priority 1 calls are down. And when we recommended that we close the substations, our recommendation was with the caveat that we want to save money. We don't want to be careless with spending money. We have this brand new station. We didn't really need the 111 substation anymore. One of the reasons that we asked and the city partnered with us with that substation was we were cramped and had no space for all these special teams folks at the old Indio station. So when we recommended that we close these stations, it was always with the caveat that we can revisit that if we need to. Now, our officers are forward deployed. They don't sit at the station waiting for a call. So,
And they have computers now, everything, and that was one of the time
And
saver.
we actually have the City Hall substation here that
right.
I think economically makes good sense, and it's nice to have folks, at City Hall that, hey, you can go talk to an officer over here, or a volunteer at least, that can summon an officer. So we're
Okay.
monitoring it, we'll keep an eye on it.
Well, and I didn't know if perhaps some of that, there's nothing in the report, or at least that I didn't see, that attributes to the number of hours of mutual aid that our officers provided to other jurisdictions. And while, like you said, that could pull somebody away from a call that's within the city limits, if they've been pulled out for either special events or something happening in Bermuda Dunes or in other unincorporated areas, just to aid some high-level incident that, and I know that there's a process of allocating that time to those cities
Right.
when they borrow our crew, but I didn't see anything in here that kind of shows. Because
Yeah.
as other cities are decreasing their sworn officers, we're not. We're choosing not to do that. We
Right.
prioritize public safety. I'm just wondering, are they becoming more reliant on us? And does that take away at all from the ability to respond to our residents?
I see the question, I see the concern. There is a quid pro quo though. So, when we need additional officers in La Quinta for an event, we pull them from the unincorporated county area. We pull them from Coachella. Palm Desert officers even come over and assist us. So we do allocate any time, and the general rule of thumb is any time 30 minutes or greater, where officers are out a beat helping somebody else, we bill that time to the appropriate entity, whether it's the county or another city, we bill that time. So we are conscious of that concern, but again, there is this quid pro quo. So, one of the things to consider is if every city out here had their own entity, we still would be responding
Sure.
mutual aid to help each other
Understood.
out. So.
Right. Overall, again, like you said, great report. I don't know if this is 80 or 90-pound matte gloss paper. I mean, that's out of your budget, right? Not ours, Chris? Okay. And I do appreciate it, and I'm going to give props to our Assistant Police Chief, Walton. He has been a fabulous advocate for what your organization represents and educating our team on the contract, what it means, and the community involvement and the collaboration. And I think that that's really clearly a balance between a contract service and being part of the family and being able to mediate both sides to get the end results that we're all happy with. So kudos to you and for allowing that flexibility in us continuing to just dig and question and understand and improve upon what you all have done such a great job for the city of La Quinta for so many years, and it just keeps getting better. So thank you.
Well, thank you, and I would like to take all the credit, but we have to thank Chris Escobedo as well as the city manager, who've been a great collaborative effort and team since the city manager's taken over and Chris has come in too. So it's been a great relationship.
Good. Dave, me too. I think it's a great report. Appreciated it. Shows exactly what you're doing out there, and that's great that we understand and that crime rate has gone down. Response time, it's simple. What has happened is your response time has gone up since we lowered the speed limits in the Cove area. So consequently, it's obvious your officers are following the speed limit signs.
Maybe we should put them on some bicycles so they could go through the stop sign.
I also wanted to thank you for the breakdown on the report of the accidents at the roundabout on Jefferson.
Okay.
Because it basically explained what it was, because, when we got the first thing, it was 97 accidents in the last 11 years, but it didn't explain what kind of accidents. And the vast majority of them was hit an object. Well, the only object they can hit other than a car was the curb.
Yeah.
Well, that's not going to stop hitting the curb. But it was good to see that kind of statistics, that we know what is occurring in the roundabout in regards to accidents and that. So thank you very much.
Dave is a former motor. I think I mentioned that, and in his past life, really a traffic guru. And he's our, whenever any lieutenant or sergeant has a traffic question, we pretty much go to Dave because he's got that expertise. So he'll be a great resource for the city while he's here.
And one last thing, Dave, thank you very much. I go to an awful lot of functions that are held in the city, and I see Dave out there and most of them. So thank you very much for your support and you being there, visible to the community. I think that's important for our city. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, if I
With
could,
that.
yeah, just briefly, real fast, I'm very impressed with the beat system. Sir Robert Peel did a good job there.
Yes.
It's only been around for a couple hundred years,
Right.
but,
Relatively new.
yeah, relatively new. And I really do think that that's obviously the way to go.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll move on to the second item on the study session, and that's economic development strategies. Chris?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So the purpose of this item this afternoon is to talk about economic development. And what it means is to begin a series of conversations that look at the future of economic development and what it means here in La Quinta. So you see the imagery here that we put in place. What we know is that things are changing in the world, and with that, the tools that we need to be updated. And so what I'm going to highlight for you is a few components that would help start and foster a conversation about the future of economic development. But before going into that, I want to share one thing. So last year, I had the opportunity to participate in the retreat with you all and many of our team members. And one thing that was really neat for me, as someone newer to the city, was this picture right here. So if you remember, as an exercise, we had to step back and create a timeline of the city from incorporation to present with various pictures. And so when I see this picture, it represents all the public infrastructure, the commercial development, and the amenities that have been brought to bear to create this community that it is today. So I say that because in being newer, and being from a neighboring jurisdiction, there are different strategies that are taking place to the east and to the west of us. And so things are developing in other places, but essentially the strategies that are serving others' needs have been done here in La Quinta and been done very effectively. So, as we know, and as I'll go into shortly, the world is changing, and with that, the need to look at the future of economic development and continue to lead the way is important. This graph here is just another depiction of the rapid growth that the city experienced over the decades. So we had increase in population, general fund revenues, and assessed valuation down the line. So with that historical progress, right, we have a series of things in front of us right now. So currently, we invest about $1.2 million in economic development activities globally. So what that means is, through property disposition, we spend money on economic analysis work to facilitate those transactions, and those transactions being the expansion of Old Town, development at Silver Rock, as well as the development of property on Highway 111. For marketing and partnerships, we have a large investment in marketing so that La Quinta is top of mind when people are looking to live, work, and play. And you'll be hearing a great presentation next from Tustin and Edie on marketing. But essentially, we contribute and invest in organizations like the Chamber of Commerce and Arts Foundation, as well as the CVB, to continue to promote the city. This year, we're going to be investing about $100,000 in regional economic development activity, and that comes in the form of participation with CVEP and investment in the Eastern Coachella Valley iHub. So on top of all these direct items, we're also investing in improving our delivery of services. So new technology and new software systems so that we can issue permits faster and more efficiently. So on this next piece, I talked a little bit about the changes taking place, and I included pieces in your staff report. And what we saw is prior to the recession, there was a lot of commercial retailers came online. But during that time period, we also began seeing signs of how consumers were changing their spending. So the recession happened, stores began closing, and what we're seeing now, and what we'll continue to see, is more stores closing, because the market is responding back to that glut of retailers that came online, as well as consumers are increasingly spending online. And for a retailer, versus opening up a new storefront, they're trading that for creating larger distribution centers to keep pace with online demand. So this is just a brief snapshot of many of the changes. And just because businesses are closing or storefronts are closing, it doesn't mean that businesses aren't adapting. Across every major category, we're seeing from women's apparel to the hospitality industry, new players and new industries are coming into the market. So Airbnb is challenging the hoteliers. Amazon is looking to get into the distribution of manufactured goods business. Tesla wants to directly sell to consumers and bypass the traditional car dealerships. And Uber is competing with the local taxi cab industry. So what we're seeing now, and we're going to continue to see, is businesses like this challenge the status quo, and as they look at the current regulations in place and how they respond to the changes in the economy. So in exploring those topics as well as other, again, in a series of conversations about economic development, other topics would include, continuing to look into this consumer trends and preferences, starting to get a sense actively about the needs of the business community, so talking actively with stakeholders, identifying investment returns for the investments we make to our regional and local partners, making good on the development of Silver Rock, 111, and the Village, and also taking a look at city regulations. So should the City Council choose to continue this conversation on economic development, there's a series of steps that we're suggesting. And again, definitely open to additional pieces, but the establishment of a City Council subcommittee to work with staff to begin these conversations so that we can talk to the business community, get the important feedback and information that will help us identify what we want in terms of returns on our investments, as well as looking back to that central question about where we go into the future. So with that said, that concludes my report, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Good. Thanks, Chris. Questions of staff? Lee?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a few questions and as well as a few comments. One, I do like the aspect from an economic development standpoint that we do need to look locally as well as regionally. I mean, looking at locally from a sales tax base for our city's sake, and our hotels and whatnot, but regionally as well from a job standpoint. You know, when the recession hit, no matter how much stores we had on 111, when there's no jobs, or when there's a huge decrease in jobs, we saw a big decrease in our sales tax revenue. So I appreciate the aspect of looking again locally as well as regional. I like your ideas on the next steps with the subcommittee and talking with the local businessmen to get an understanding of what the challenges they see and the changes that we're doing in-house to help make business easier in La Quinta. The one-stop shop, so to speak, for permitting and things like that, I think that's going to work well for us. You know, the economic development in the sense that the money's being spent from both a marketing standpoint as well as an investment standpoint. I don't know how we're going to say, okay, what is our investment returns from local and regional partnerships? I don't know how we're going to gauge that, you know, and if there's some manner that we can say, okay, here's a formula, or here's what we're going to look to see whether those programs are successful. Is our investment in those projects better spent someplace else? We're going to have to find some manner to gauge that. One of the things that I wanted to know too, regarding online sales, there's laws are looking at from a national as well as state standpoint on where these sales tax are going. Are there sales tax being charged, again, with Amazon, and those sales tax go to the point of delivery? I don't know if we've got any, I mean, there's laws that they're looking at right now in Sacramento along this line.
It's called the point of sale.
The point of sale. So I mean, Amazon's out there wherever they are.
Well, the league is pushing this, I think.
Well, yeah, and it's been a big issue for several years.
Right.
And the bigger it gets, the more anxiety there is, and the bigger the problem has become, because a lot of the cities, and I've reported on this before, a lot of the cities have entered into agreements, just like the economic development agreements that we've had with other companies, whereby they would return a certain part of the tax to the storage house people. What's the word? Warehouses.
Well,
So
Amazon.
that would put Amazon would have a big warehouse in City A, and City A is going to get the sales tax. Well, they were returning, they have agreements up to 80% of that back to Amazon. So stop and think about that.
Well, I thought there's like a 1-year agreement. Amazon reached a 1-year agreement with the state of California and say, all right, let's leave this alone for 1 year and we'll work something out. But I don't, yeah, that was a couple of years ago, so I don't know where it stands today
Okay, where it
in regards to
stands right
sales
now
tax.
is the language that's on the books is that situs, it's the return of the tax dollar is point of sale. And what the league's position's taken along with revenue and tax is that it should be point of delivery.
Right.
And where we have to go from that is, and I was supposed to have a conference call yesterday, it was canceled until next Monday. We're putting committees together because we're gonna have to, through the whole state of California, we're gonna have local groups that meet with the city and the developer and the Amazons of the world, if you will, because you're not gonna be able to turn those agreements around. And it would be a long way to go to reach a compromise. We've gotta get the ones that have those agreements to come to the table and compromise that going forward, there will be no more of those agreements. And we'll have to get a legislator to carry legislation to change where the sales tax is returned to.
'Cause that's
so
a-
we got a long road to go.
Then I would ask that we maybe either become a bigger player or we monitor that in a better way to help, for our city, because it's a national problem.
Right.
My wife goes online and buys something at Amazon, Lord knows where that particular warehouse may be.
Yeah.
Whether it's in Nevada or, Texas, or other states that have no tax. And so, to monitor what we can do to help, whether it be in Sacramento or be in Washington, again, this is a national issue, so we're not the only ones out there trying to solve this for our own city's sake and our own city sales tax revenues. But just,
California's gonna suffer.
yeah.
California's
And I thought they were going to when they made the last deal with Amazon, but again, Sacramento's a slippery place. That's about all the questions I have, mainly on that sales tax. But, you know, well, sticking on the report here, marketing, you know, and the $1,060,000 spent on marketing, that includes the Chamber of Commerce, it includes the Arts Foundation, it includes our own marketing, as you've got here, $210,000.
Right.
And $600,000 with the CVB.
Well, I'll let Chris explain, because I had already got the answer to my question on that. That's-
Yeah,
I mean, I
absolutely.
took a look at the,
It's not direct marketing.
you guys did a a TOT comparative report for me at one point in time, and we've got the TBID
Mhm.
assessment,
Mhm.
whatever that is, for 2%, and the
Yeah.
TMD assessment for 1%.
Right.
So the combined 3% all goes to CVB?
So the tourism bid is 2%. The hotels paid it directly to the county. The tourism and marketing district also goes to the CVB. So a total of 3% does go to CVB for marketing. And so with the TMD 1%, we collect that and then remit it back to the CVB. So in the $600,000, that's the portion for TMD 1% for the remaining amount of year. This was something that was brought online August of last year. And
That's
the
the new
difference
one.
is, and the remainder is the amount that we pay the CVB as a part of the JPA and TOT sharing. So those two amounts combined.
That goes back to my earlier question, the investment returns for local and regional partnerships. I would include CVB in that partnership. I mean, if we pay them $600,000.
We don't pay them, so
if
it's a
the tax
pass-through
that's
of.
collected through TOT
Correct.
goes to
A portion
them.
of it is part of the bid, which
Right.
all cities,
Right,
most
and the
cities participate in.
1% we collect, we give back to them. I mean,
It-
we did that and
the-
changed that a
the
couple years ago.
hoteliers- The hoteliers,
I understand all
right.
that, but I'm saying, how do we know that that $600,000 is working for the city of La Quinta?
Well, we can tell you, I'll bring the next, the RevPAR, the occupancy by hotel, and what the leads for conventions and individual consumer spending are. I mean, we get that from CVB.
Right.
For each city and for the region overall. So if Scott and his team are doing their job by reinvesting those in air campaigns, ground, regional, all of those mediums, digital, and we're seeing an increase in visitors and tourism and TOT overall, which we have, then I'm saying that investment that would be
It's
our
working,
yield,
just
it's
via
working.
The additional TOT revenues in general
Mhm.
for the city of La
Yeah.
Quinta. Okay. I figured you work,
Okay.
yeah.
Yep.
Okay, that's all the questions I have right now. Thank you, Chris.
Anyone
Thank you,
else?
Mr. Mayor.
Christie?
So, under regional economic development, we've given CVEP 50,000 this year, plus 40 for the Innovation Hub, 40,000.
Correct.
On the Innovation Hub, did all those parties contribute?
All of the initial parties contributed with the exception of the city of Coachella.
Right. So our deal was that we write this check, which I assume we've already done,
Correct.
provided everyone else contributed. Who's making up the rest?
So as a part of those follow-up conversations, CVEP committed the remaining amount. So because one of the partners did not participate, they covered the difference. So it's CVEP's own dollars that are being brought in to get these $40,000.
Okay. All right, on page 208, one of the bullet points under regional economic development is that we would like to conduct a series of training programs to create a performance-based culture. A series of training programs that would involve whom? Who would we, who would we be training?
That's our staff. That's our own staff development.
Right, that would be current staff.
Okay.
The current staff improvements that are taking place so that we can deliver services locally more effectively.
Okay. And in that training program, would we have, would our little ad hoc committee, I guess, be included in that also?
Ad hoc or
Well, subcommittee, I'm sorry.
In terms of what aspect, because we haven't developed these training programs yet, so.
Well, I just want to know what they are and who's going to be part of them and what they're really for. Conducting a series of training programs to create a performance-based culture, those are nice words, it just doesn't tell me anything.
And this is something that we haven't developed yet.
Right.
Okay.
This is one of our goals to do so. We could certainly discuss that with the ad hoc committee, but we don't at this time have the program
Okay.
put together.
All right. Right. And when we're, again, on page 208, under the next steps, it says engage in conversations with the business community, property owners, and industry leaders. And would this be something that the subcommittee would be doing along with staff? Is
Yes,
that
absolutely.
Okay.
That we would invite that, absolutely.
Okay. And the next bullet point says identify the desired return the city should receive on its economic development investments. In the past, that's been like 10%, is that what we're, 10 or 10?
That's right.
Okay.
11 sounds pretty good. Seems like I've heard that a lot.
It's
11's
ranged,
another number?
11's a good return.
it's ranged from
It's low.
10 to 15%.
Okay.
That's what we were looking at, and we varied it based upon type of project and the condition of the economy at the time.
Okay, so are we going to discuss that further tonight and come up with a number, or is that
No.
just informational? Okay. Alrighty. On page 210, under the the statewide local 1% sales tax, what's a retail fulfillment center? It's at the very bottom.
That would be like so like Amazon, you place your order.
The
they
warehouse.
have a warehouse
Got
somewhere
it.
to deliver goods to you.
Okay. I actually went online when I was reading this report and looked at, Googled Uber. That's very interesting.
Yep.
But I can see how it could be a problem in some places, but,
Well, they use them for Coachella and Stagecoach.
Right.
yeah, I know, yeah. Okay, thank you. This is good. There's a lot of good information here. We just need to
Mhm.
get the engine moving a little faster.
Good, okay. Terry?
Marketing has always brought question marks to my mind. It's like, where are we? What are we doing? We do so much. We really do. We make it every effort we can, and we went to all the social media kind of marketing. And the way I understand it, you know, you pay the higher dollars to get up to the top of the list and have your name come up first. And so we've done all of that stuff, but you continually hear about this world changing a lot. So how do we meet the demands of this new world? And I don't know. I don't know. I see where we're going to continue doing a lot of the things, or it doesn't say we are going to continue, but it would appear that quite a few of the things that's in this document are the continuation of programs that we already have. I would recommend on the marketing that the city is engaged in for La Quinta, the 210 in direct marketing to support and promote large-scale events, which includes the Chamber of Commerce and the La Quinta Arts Foundation. We did have the La Quinta Arts Foundation do a report that they submitted, a survey and a report. Where that stands, whether or not we liked it. We didn't ever have it, as a discussion effort up here. So I don't know where that stands. We've never had the chamber do anything like that. So we might want to have a document that we could go to in reference to their efforts. And maybe we ought to see if they have anything in the mix for the future for the gem, if they have any new ideas for the gem and how we use that. And I would like to see us use the gem a little better than we do. I think we could make a better presentation in there than we do. And the discussion that we had about, off, if you will, about reaching the North La Quinta, and how can we reach out further and do that? I think that's really important. And I need to get some feedback from some other folks, whether or not the GEM is doing any kind of communication. If we have a sense that it's doing anything with the North La Quinta. And, because it just, there's, continually the Cove gets everything, the Cove gets all the attention, and we know that that's actually not true. It appears that way, but there's more people in the Cove that are involved than we can get the north side to be involved. However, they're gonna be really involved
With assessments.
Yeah. Yes, so they will be visiting us. So, I think the next steps are great. I think we established the subcommittee, point two there, engage in these conversations with the business community. I thought that was ongoing. I thought that was one of the things that the chamber was doing, and it was ongoing. But apparently the idea here would be to have the subcommittee involved in those conversations, which would certainly be beneficial. Yeah, the return on investment, that's tricky. It depends what the investment is and to who and what you're looking for. Can somebody get some money from us and bring in 11 people? Well, that's a return on investment. So it's a little hard to pinpoint that one down.
Mayor, could I comment with respect to something?
Sure.
Yeah.
Terry, you and I talked about this the other day, and and you had such a good point, and I think it's worth bringing up, and perhaps maybe it needs to be part of this, but there are those folks who live on the north side of Highway 111. I hate to break up the city, but anyway.
Yeah, I do too.
And if we could, if somehow we could have a key person there to have a similar website to what the Cove puts out.
Yeah.
It's not a website, I want to say, but you know what I'm talking about. They send us the informational items. It keeps those folks involved.
That's
And
right.
I've belonged to that forever, and it's very informative. It's not a hard read, but it seems like we need a person.
And I think we
over there.
actually said something about Lee might know somebody over there.
We did, yes, we did. Might know somebody that would
Not
like
Lee,
to take
but
that
we
and
might
run.
know somebody
Yeah.
that would, be interested in doing a
I think-
little
I
bit
think
of newsletter.
And
that-
maybe that's something we can bring up later this
Yeah,
evening, when we
okay.
talk about North La Quinta, and we see who comes in.
Well.
Okay, yeah, there could be some victims, or people there. All right, that's all. Thank you.
Anyway, I don't have very much to suggest on changing the kind of advertising that we're doing. I think that we cover all of the bases as best we can. The economy continues to have to improve, or all of these efforts aren't gonna get you anywhere if the economy doesn't improve. So, thank you.
Okay, Linda?
Thank you. A couple of things. I'm looking forward to the marketing presentation. I spent quite a bit of time with Tustin and Edie on the phone with 2 pages of questions that I sent over yesterday, and I'll reserve comments on that piece. And obviously on the $600,000 to CBB, that's clearly TOT bid related. There's other marketing aspects that are hard dollars that, again, we'll discuss in marketing. But when we talk about return on investment and demanding that we need to have a measurement tool, I agree. And when you look at the local versus regional, I believe there needs to be both, because we're only as strong as the weakest link. But we're not asking those questions on our $90,000, $100,000 for regional economic development. We're paying $50,000, and I've always been a CVEP supporter, and I'll continue to be. But as we look towards economic drivers and how do we bring more money into the city, we're paying that to be part of the discussion. And I'm not completely comfortable in the specific economic development efforts of La Quinta, I would say, just like you could pose that question about CVB, on what they're doing. Nor do I feel comfortable yet with the iHub. I think it's a great program. It's obviously succeeded on the Palm Springs side, but somehow we need to do more than just have a seat at the table if we want it to benefit us more. And I look at that almost $100,000 saying, does a consultant or does some other economic driver serve us better? Do we utilize funds from the chamber that we're contributing? They're doing a contract for services. So when you look at what are they doing, like the Arts Foundation did their survey, we're paying them to produce a newsletter for all the residents. So there is a specific dollar amount that's tied to that. But their visitor center efforts could be reallocated and have them team up with the subcommittee and or the staff and help on the economic component, work with the commercial brokers, and get a hardcore team like we almost used to have in staff when we had the RDA and economic development crew that was out there just doing what they could to bring in business. I think that we're at that time when an opportunity, as we're looking at still managing expenses, yet going out to be early adopters with new trends and being conservative about that, rethinking the investments for these individual groups and pooling the resources together so we're not doing it all ourselves, but making sure we're doing what we need for La Quinta overall. The big box.
Let me ask you if I could.
Sure.
In that regard, I mean, I talk from a regional economic development standpoint, and that to me is whether it be CDEP or this new East group that is coming along, albeit slowly, and the aspect of jobs. Because I don't know from the population of La Quinta how much of the working force of La Quinta works outside our city limits. So from an economic development standpoint and the sake of jobs, where do you see CDEP and those groups, whether it be east or west or?
Well, I mean, obviously jobs are important, but when we look at even the downturn that we had, the city of La Quinta was still 6%, 6 point something on unemployment. So whether they're working in the city or outside the city, somehow our residents have selected industries that were stable enough to see us through the recession. More so than others, maybe other cities that had a higher service industry population. I don't think that was anything because of what CVEP did. I think that is just the complement of the residents and the workforce that we have here. But I'm a proponent of put the widget factory out in the sand, way out in East Valley, but let the owners of the widget factory live in La Quinta. I mean, I get that, but what is our contribution to make that happen?
It's very hard to quantify.
It is very hard to quantify, and
A lot of what happens in La Quinta happens because we're La Quinta.
and that's where we maximize. So that's my next discussion when we go to marketing. So I'll save that. Thank you for that entree. Okay, the only other thing would be like the conversion of the big boxes and what we do with those. Is there a way to make mini distribution hubs, mini warehouse centers, or something for some of these entities that we could garner some of that online piece or something else? Frank and I had this discussion yesterday about online shopping, and that's the way things go. And I feel like it takes away the emotional experience of being able to share what you did to go buy your car versus just, hey, I sat online for 4 hours and research and boom, look at my new car. Versus going there and test driving and looking at them all and talking about the salesperson. I mean, society is kind of like eliminating the experience, and we're trying to attract the experience in every way, shape, and form with everything that we're doing from an economic development. So there's that balance. Subcommittee, I agree we should establish that. I would recommend Lee and Christie for those, since those would be more stable positions over the next couple of years, given there's an election coming up. And that way you've got the finance CPA hat and you're not going anywhere for a while. Including commercial brokers in our conversations and utilizing, they're often the first to know that a business is coming before we do. And I know you've met with them, but perhaps they're a more engaged component that we can utilize along with the chamber. So it's not just a visitors, let's do this. It truly is a business driver for our existing and our future businesses.
It's a good point. I think raising property values is a part of economic development. So it'll be interesting to hear what they have to say.
And city regulations, yeah, we're known to be really tough, so loosening those up would be good and keeping our standard of quality. 10%, 11%, I favor that kind of level of return in lots of areas. Okay, I'm excited about combining some of the marketing, economics, chamber functions. Just we have a lot of opportunity to build a nice little group of trendsetters and looking at those things. And go back to that bull. I really like that bull because we're forging ahead.
Mr. Mayor, if I
Thank you,
can,
Chris.
one more thing. In regards to economic development too, there are, I count five programs here, not programs, but 5 events here in, whether it be La Quinta or our surrounding cities, whether it be Humana, the tennis tournament, the arts festival, Coachella, and Stagecoach. I mean, those 5 events bring hundreds of thousands of people through La Quinta. And I would like to make sure that our economic development strategies include maximizing our opportunities with those 5 events. I mean, there's quite a few people. Given, I heard Stagecoach in North La Quinta, or Coachella Fest, excuse me, but just to make sure that we're really maximizing, you know, the opportunities that those events bring to the city. Obviously with the Arts Foundation or Humana, I mean, they're in it. But the others as well. I mean, the tennis tournament brought in, I think their count was 400,000.
Yeah.
So just to make sure.
Goes up every year too.
Right, right.
I think that's another fabulous entree to our marketing discussion next. So I'm so excited everybody's on
Thank
board
you.
with this.
Yeah, but I'd like to add to what Lee said. I've asked in the last 2 weeks 3 different restaurants, and they all said they got no business from any of those events except the ones that are held in La Quinta.
Is that right?
Right. And the conversation kind of came up because of food trucks too, and what we're going to do with those, when and if that ever comes before us to talk about. And the tennis tournament and the tennis down there now, how many restaurants are they at? So every one of these events is capturing those people for the entire time of their event.
They're trying.
So I don't know how we're going to break through that when you say we need to maximize on that. I
Yes.
don't know how.
I-
The grocery stores are busier than heck.
Right.
Hotels?
And hotels are.
Hotels are, well, when you look at what Palm Springs has done during those festivals, like in between weeks, and or even sometimes dual the same days, they're doing their own little mini concerts at the Hard Rock or what have you. So those that people come to town without going to those festivals because they want to experience the geography and the excitement of everybody going to the festivals. They just want to be in the area during those times. It's kind of weird, but it's they want to belong, but they don't want to sit there for 3 days out in grass, and they're experiencing different things.
The grass again? Oh, on the grass.
On the grass, yes.
Oh, that's not a conversation we can have.
But that's creating dual events that give them something else to do either during the day before they go there at night, for those that just go at night. There's lots of opportunities.
Now, I just wanted to get clarity from something Chris said, when Coachella, the city, did not participate financially in the IHOP or whatever it was. IHOP. You said that CFIP covered Coachella with $40,000 of their own money.
Correct.
Do they have their own money, or do they have
Our money.
They have the city's contributions and then plus additional investments and contributions. So
Yeah, because
more than just
their
ours.
general fund is made up of everybody's
Sure.
dues, right?
Oh, plus.
Right, there's,
Private sector, yeah.
There are private
Mhm.
sectors involved.
Yes.
Yes, quite a few.
Lots of banks.
Quite a few.
But it's still funny to hear that their own money.
But does that contribution allow Coachella to play?
it does not.
Good.
You know, we go through this every year, doing economic and marketing strategies and that. And every year we tweak it a little differently and add to, subtract from, and that, the needs and that. But we seem to gain with exposure and things that we're doing and that. So I think staff does a good job when you're putting these things together, and that's so that we can promote, you know, our best interest. I've never been a big fan of CVEP in that, strictly because I don't think that they bring a lot into La Quinta. They do a great job for the Coachella Valley as a whole in that, but the city of La Quinta, I think we've discussed this for many years, the good things and the bad things as far as CVEP is concerned. And it is necessary in the valley, but I'm not sure the benefits that we get out of from CVEP and that in the city of La Quinta itself and that. And they use other things saying, well, you know, our citizens live out there or work out someplace else, and that, I don't know that this is factual, and that it's a good talking point, but I'm not sure that it's true. All in all, good job. Thank you very much for doing these things and putting it together, and that I think we move forward every year, especially with the economy changing, and we need to look at the alternatives, and I think Lee brought it up with the 5 things, but we've got 2 more, because Golden Voice is talking about 2 more events in the fall, and that, so this is, it's important for us in the city of La Quinta to become involved with them and what they're doing, because it's going to bring in financial benefits to the city of La Quinta. And the fact that I know that the hotels during the tennis tournaments are booked solid. And if they're booked solid, they're eating, especially our hotels, they're eating in our restaurants here in the city of La Quinta. And like I said, I was telling somebody, we had dinner at Lavender's this weekend, and I was talking to their owner, general manager. He said this is the best year they have ever had, and, financially. And I said, why are you closing up in June and not opening up until October? You ought to stay open a little longer. But that's the way they want to do it. But it's good. Unless there's anything else.
Do we need to suggest people for the subcommittee? As I suggested Lee and Christie, is that something we do now or
That
something later?
should come back on another agenda.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. This is just a study session. Okay, all right, let's move on to the marketing strategy.
Gotta put some kind of time frame on this if we're gonna eat.
Yeah, we'll finish up with this.
Because we are bringing in dinner, so that will be in the back room.
Normally at 6:15. So. Edie, Dustin.
Good evening. We're ready to talk about marketing. We have a little bit of a different presentation for you this evening. We put this project on what is called Prezi, a little bit different than your PowerPoint. And that is a little bit to tell our story about how we're going to do many things, and we're going to do it with a little bit different point of view. So I hope you enjoy our presentation tonight.
Good evening. Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council. So yeah, Edie said we're going to be using this new software called Prezi for you tonight. We understand that your agenda is full this evening, so we'll be giving you this presentation at the 30,000-foot level with the ability to go into more detail when you have questions. We'll be able to answer them and actually show you some things. And Christy, there's some graphs in here if you are interested. We got plenty of content in there. So anyways, these are the marketing strategies that we're proposing for 2014-15. We have 4 different areas, and what we know about, and you read this in the report, is that people that are under the age of 55 are generally consuming more digital content and interactive kind of content, and folks that are age 55 and older are using more paper and broadcast media. So, with that in mind, we'll go through this presentation. First on our list here is our target markets. These are the adults with disposable income, our young affluent families, the part-time and seasonal residents, those empty nesters and retirement prospects, people who enjoy traveling and attending events, and then a specific geographic region, including the Coachella Valley and our regional drive markets, which are Los Angeles, Orange County, San Diego, and the Inland Empire. Moving right along, these are the digital efforts, which include websites and social media. This discussion this evening focuses on the $210,000 that we're talking about for this program. Last year, as you know, we took the budget and split it in half. We did half digital and half traditional. This year, we're recommending that we do 60% digital based on some of the metrics that we received over the last year. This information includes an increased interactive website content, increased social media engagement, which includes the Facebook, the Twitter, and some various other forms of social media. Continuing with the pay-per-click programs that we're currently doing, and continuing with the travel website ads that we have going. Next on the list is our traditional efforts, which includes our print and media. And Lee, this is for you. We do want to continue supporting those signature events, and we can go into more detail on that for you, as well as our local messaging campaign, the regional messaging campaign that we would like to do, as well as our CVB co-op advertising, which is fairly small, but I can zoom into that for you when we get there. And then we also mentioned that this will be about 40% of the budget this year that we're recommending. And the last kind of spoke is our public relations and community outreach, including the meetings that the staff is currently having with our community groups to discuss La Quinta's future. And then mentioned earlier today, the Coffee with a Cop program, which was very successful, as well as our event partnerships. We talked about the Humana Challenge, the Arts Foundation and their festival, and then events that the Chamber has, as well as promoting shoulder season events, like the Patriot Ride for Our Heroes, the new coming to town, the Italian Festival, and then some other events that will be brought forward for you to consider. And then lastly, our public relations, which includes our email blasts and various press releases that we put out from the city. So these are the strategies that we're looking at for this fiscal year. And the question is, why do we do marketing? Why are we doing these multi-faceted versions of marketing? Because it's one of many ways to improve our TOT, our property and sales tax revenues. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have and go into a little bit more detail for you.
Okay. Thank you. Questions of staff?
Lee,
go ahead.
Thank you. In going through the report, I think you guys did a great job, and like you talked about, you're looking at local as well as regional from a marketing standpoint. And one question regarding the tourism website on page 216, the tourism website enhancements and the vacation rental directory. I mean, we looked at this last year from a standpoint of being on top of the, the TOT for the residential rentals. And it made me think, our return on investment in that project alone, how is that going?
Yeah, right about 300,000.
For what period of time? Is that for 6 months? Is that for a year?
Les has a better handle on that. I'll ask him to come
that
and talk
seems
about that.
to be a huge opportunity. And if it's only 300,000, we still have a way to go.
Well, we're still calculating that, and really these last 3 months are the critical part. So April being a significant one for us with the 3 concerts. So we'll know more probably in the next 30 to 45 days.
Okay.
But just to give you an idea, we went from about 200 registered vacation rentals to over 850 rentals right now that are registered with us, and we're still not even.
You went from 250 to
200 to about 850.
Oh, okay.
So
Okay.
we're expecting some big numbers coming in, so I think it'll be even greater than 300,000. But again, we have to wait and see, and it's a new time for us. We've never seen that many rentals registered with us, and going through the peak of that season. So we'll be able to know more in the next 30 to 45 days.
All right, thank
So,
you.
yeah, I think our mid-year projections showed 300, and that was conservative, because
Yes.
originally we were looking at 6
Right,
that we were
looking at 6
anticipating.
originally.
But the question would be, as part of that retooling and training, et cetera, do we have the staff to support keeping up with that? And if we don't, that seems to be an opportunity to discuss later on when we get to the budget. That could be an easy staff position that yields quite a bit of money.
Substantial return, right.
In how you're looking at retooling the customer service aspect of
Yeah, we
counterpoints.
definitely need to talk about that further. I mean, our focus right now is just being somewhat proactive with our consultant who's reaching out to vacation rental companies and individual property owners, and we're really in a reactive mode after that. We can
Right.
certainly, with the right resources, be much more proactive with what has been mentioned here. I mean, we can find ways to promote and be of resource to our vacation rentals that are registered with us to give some type of return for them as to why they're registered with us, in addition to the enforcement mechanism that's in place too, to ensure that people abide by our rules and regulations.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Les.
And if I can expand on that, actually, Lee, what you see in the report is actually based on a few factors, and one of them being in our community outreach in the past, a large number of people have asked us about where can we find vacation rentals, and what resources does the city have to be able to do that. And we haven't had that ability on our website. Now with this new feature, we'll be able to host a listing on our tourism website and be able to filter it down to only allow those that are signed up for that TOT program. So
Great.
so that literally,
great.
folks will be able to book those on our website, and we'll be almost guaranteed that we'll be receiving that
Start
TOT.
playing LaQuinta.com will kind of guide them right to.
So yeah, so not only does it currently have the hotel listings in the city, but
Right.
it will have the vacation rentals as well.
Fantastic. Now, given I am an accountant, so marketing is not my bag, but what my concern is here is in regards to your report on 214 and the aspect of seeking an advertising agency with expertise in media buys and print advertising.
Yes.
And let me start a little further back. As a CPA, years ago, the laws changed in my industry where I was going to be allowed to be licensed to sell investments.
Okay.
I chose not to sell investments because that's not what I do. There are people that sell investments every day, all day, and will always do better than I ever could at that point in time. So in that manner, hiring a marketing company, I would not want to limit them to media buys. Please understand, I mean, what you show on pages 215 and 216, and these great things that we're going to do, I would just ask that we have that advertising company involved in all of this. I mean, you guys do a tremendous job. I don't want to take a thing away from what you guys are doing. But you're not every day, all day in advertising. And so I would just ask that we don't limit that advertising group, whoever it may be, you know, to not just media buys, but make sure they're involved in the whole thing. And our message is always consistent and always clear, whether it's our rentals or whether it's our eat and dine in LaQuinta, it's always consistent. And so I would just ask that that you guys consider that
Yes.
from that standpoint on that marketing
Yes.
company.
We think that's very important too, and whether we contract with GrafTech, they are constantly giving us ideas on things from the market that they see in the digital world, and
Great.
we anticipate the same thing to be occurring with the print media as well.
Okay.
We want to have that expertise that we don't have, whether it's for
Yeah.
new design ideas or copyright ideas or advertising and media buys where they believe is the best. And that's really important to us because that's an area that
Yes.
we don't have. So we
Yeah,
clearly hear what
that's
you're
great.
saying on that.
Mike Shealy and his group over at GrafTech, that's what they do all day long.
Yes.
So I'm sure
Yes,
they can continue that. But that was my main concerns. Thanks, you guys.
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Kristen? did you-
Yes, I have just a couple questions. Who's in our local cooperative marketing program right now? Who's on board with that?
Well, we have several. We have in the past, we do a co-op with the CVB specifically, and they I have a graph I can show you that their reach is phenomenal. Gives you a good idea of what we're talking about. So this is down here. You see this little black area. This is our reach. Okay, this is Coachella Valley, LA, San Diego, Orange County, Inland Empire. This is the reach that we're going to get for this $210,000. Now, if I expand out, the areas in red, this is the CVB's reach. It includes the West Coast, a lot of the Midwest, as well as Western Canada. And so when we pay into the CVB, they take that money and they go on a national level. And their mission is to bring national and international, and they bring folks to the valley. And then we come in and we bring folks to LaQuinta.
Okay, that,
Yes.
you're on the bullet point above that, the one below it, the cooperative.
Oh, I'm
local
sorry.
Cooperative marketing program.
Oh, yes.
I know we had like 4 or 5 players. I just wondered who's still in the mix.
All of them are still in the mix.
Okay.
We have, the Chamber is co-op, the Arts Foundation is co-op. We have several businesses that are part of the co-op, like the LaQuinta Resort, and Silver Rock is a player. We also have restaurants that are part of this group as well.
Were the
So
auto dealers, a couple years back, have the auto dealers done anything recently?
Not recently, no. But we're taking a look at all of these and going to be going to all of them and offer opportunities for co-op with the city.
Okay, and then I just have one other comment slash question.
Yeah.
We have a tourist information center that's very well hidden at the chamber. It's not the chamber's fault, by the way, but we need to do something about that. It needs to be out in the public. It's a good source of marketing for us, for people to grab brochures and take them home or do whatever. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah.
We do have some thoughts on that. We're hopeful. We've been in conversations with David and Doug Motz in particular about this idea of moving the chamber over here to the city hall, taking a look at how the visitor center might actually be workable, maybe integrated in, not necessarily to the customer service center, but the customer service ideology, if you will, or some of the same, so that we're doing things in a more modern way. And we've had those conversations with David about how we could work together to help them even modernize some of their things, so that there's not a lot of business cards laying out, that really we could use some things that were more modern. And David is really wanting to do that. So that's going to be one of the questions and one of the things we'd like to bring forward to you when we start looking at their contract. We think it makes some good sense for them to be here with us. It really makes some good sense when we're talking about our economic development and pulling all that together and having them be part of that subcommittee. David should be going out as well and be part of that with you all and a staff member. So we're hopeful that that's what we're going to be able to achieve.
Okay, Frank and I did a tour of the CVB offices. It's been a while. But they have a tourist information center that is just wow. And have you seen it?
Oh, yes.
Okay, so I don't need to preach to the choir here. But it is fabulous.
It's next level.
Yeah, yes,
Yeah.
yes. So, yeah, I would be excited about that. We just need to do something with that.
We think that if we can partner together, we can come up with some things to
Okay.
help to elevate that.
Yeah, it needs elevation. You know, when you're on the bottom, there's no way to go but up. Okay.
Terry?
Well, I was interested in Christy's question about the local cooperative marketing program, because I've also been kind of concerned about that, if you will. And if I'm hearing that 3 or 4 of the partners are the Arts Foundation, the Chamber of Commerce, Silver Rock, and there was one more.
Resort.
Yeah, Desert Classic Charities,
I mean,
various
and
restaurants
that's
too.
kind of like we're already partners, aren't we, in a lot of that stuff, so I'm not sure. And I in my discussions with Frank earlier today, I brought that up, that perhaps if we're not getting the auto dealers or the restaurants, which I think that for years, we've always talked about getting the restaurants together. We didn't have car dealerships at the time, but now we do. Maybe we aren't putting enough of us in there, and we're expecting too much of them. So I don't know whether you need to kind of look at the breakdown, if you will, of the program.
Yeah, and we actually.
60, 50, 50 or whatever.
Right, and we actually do have several restaurants that are players in our co-ops as well, like Las Casuelas, Quinta, and the Quinta Baking Company, Lavender that the mayor talked about, they're partners, as well as a number of other businesses too. And speaking specifically about restaurants and co-op, coming up, we're supporting the Restaurant Week, Palm Springs Restaurant Week, and we have about a dozen La Quinta restaurants that are featured in the Restaurant Week. And we're offering co-op opportunities for all of them to be able to participate. We as the city are going to be buying ads to promote our restaurants, and we'll also be offering them additionally co-op opportunities for them to be featured in various ads that we're buying in the Desert Sun and other publications to promote the Restaurant Week and then all of our restaurants in the city. So.
Yeah, I really do think that there is a place in the city for some, and I know 15 years ago, I thought the chamber should have had a restaurant, because that's all we had at the time that was building up, is get the restaurants together and work together. But it was always unsure. I think that restaurants don't want to do it. When you go out and bang their heads together.
We've got that taste of La Quinta that they do, but sometimes the weather gives them a challenge.
Yeah, but I was talking about the cooperative marking outside of the city.
Right.
Anyway, they've
Right.
been slow to come on board. On page 216, and I referenced that a little earlier, the gem and redesign the city pages. I think that's a terrific idea.
We
I'm
are,
not sure
yes.
what I think is wrong with it. It seems too black and white, too particular, boring works, yeah. But, yeah, so I'd like to see a couple of ideas come forward on that one.
Yes.
We agree. We'd like to have some better graphic design for the city pages and have them really look new and dynamic.
Right.
Because they've been using the same format for many years, and it's time for a change.
Yeah, that's coming in the summer.
And then the interactive Viking art and park maps, we also have an historical map, so you don't want to leave that out of there.
Thank you.
Are we going to continue with those little ones?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, we hand those out like you would not believe, especially at community events, and people, that's what they take. That's the number one thing they want is hiking and biking.
Yeah,
That is
well,
the-
let the Viking one just take off the coat.
I know, that's right. I'll make a note of
What
that.
we'll do is we'll highlight the stop signs. We'll make the stop signs really large on there. Yeah.
Go to the Quinta signs.
That's right.
No, it is annoying the way they ride around up there.
Yeah, yeah.
Wish they would, in and of themselves, as a group, they ought to be a little more.
It can be like that on Fred Waring too, I mean,
Well,
it's a lot faster.
On Jefferson too, I see it all the time.
And I've got a cooperative program, I guess, several times there, so you've had it in here several times.
Yes.
However, a lot of what's here is what we've been doing, and that's what I said,
Yep.
how new can you get if we're not already there? So,
Yeah, I can. A lot of the traditional efforts are similar to what you've seen, and we, like you mentioned earlier, make a couple tweaks here and there, but it's working. People are responding to what we're doing, so we like to keep that going.
and one of the questions that Christy and I had the other day is, are we getting a email list, and can we break it down? So, I mean, I don't want to necessarily just use the whole thing. Are we doing a newsletter out on that email that we know that folks on the north side are getting that?
Well, as far as the geography goes, we don't necessarily know where they're coming from, but we do get subscribers. So because it's an email newsletter list, we have to have people that actually subscribe to that. And we have about 6,000 on our community services email that goes out monthly. A little over 6,000, I believe. But we've had tremendous impact in reaching the north via our Facebook page, which now has, as of this week, is now over 25,000 people are on it, with the majority being residents of the Coachella Valley. And just to speak on that a little bit, we've hosted 3 of our 4 movies thus far.
Yeah, I was going to ask you how that went up
North
there.
La Quinta. It's been phenomenal. This last movie that we showed at the park, Disney's Frozen, we had about 300 people out there. Now the other 2 that we showed, one of them had to be canceled because of the wind, and with a 20-foot movie screen, it becomes a sail and dangerous. But the one before that, we got through about 3/4 of the movie, and then we had to shut it down for safety. But even that one had about 100 or so folks. So it leaps and bounds. I mean, when we're reaching, and those 4 movies specifically are in the north, and then when the summertime comes, we're moving it to the pool and being shown the rest of them over there. But we are reaching the north, and
Well, that's good.
yeah,
Good to hear that.
and they're very supportive of what we're doing out there. So.
Now, and then I just want clarity on something that you said, and I'll find my little note, if you will. When you started off with something about folks 55 and under.
Yes.
Were more, I don't think your word was digital, but it was very much like that.
Yes.
And then ones 55 and older, you said are using more paper.
Yes, more paper and more broadcasts.
How can you be using more paper?
Well, they're getting their information via print media or broadcast
We're
media.
not using more paper, we're also interconnecting the paper with the digital, if you will.
Sure,
So
that's true.
Give us a break.
I've heard that from Frank all week.
I know we're short on time. Again, I think that what I learned on their breakdown of the $210,000 budget that really encompasses the items on page 215 and the top of 216. So after the in addition, all of those things are outside the 210,000. So when you look at Chamber, La Quinta Arts, all the Humana, that's all under separate contract. So those are extra dollars for those contractual arrangements and or line items that we've agreed upon in the past. On the tourism website enhancements with the vacation rentals, I suggested adding kind of that commercial and or realtor listings or at least links to them. Is the Silver Rock collecting emails when they're doing the resident cards? Because I know the app's there, I've got the app. And are we cross-marketing or cross-collecting emails for the purposes of marketing?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I guess in a nutshell, clearly working more with entities like the Chamber, the resort, the folks that are driving either sales tax or TOT in either co-ops or to combine the dollars and rethink the use of some of those dollars to help us is going to be beneficial, because with the more digital we do, the better return on investment we can manage and track and monitor to justify. But the caveat to some of you all parlaying into what I wanted to suggest that we'll be doing hopefully come budget is we need to increase this marketing budget. We were twice this amount a few years ago, and when everybody was reducing their budgets by 15%, marketing got cut by 50%.
I agree.
So we need to just look at, and that's why I brought up things like CVEP and the iHub and what is it really doing when we can see that if we put dollars towards X, we're getting something back out of it. Just throwing out, 50, 60 grand is a possibility. When you look at those event type specific, Mayor, I even suggested things like Sunnylands, the Tram, and the Living Desert. They're bringing hundreds of thousands of people into the valley at those venues. They're not right next to our city, but it's reasons for them to go there as attractions when they're staying in our hotels. So just lots of opportunities. I love the Prezi. That's pretty cool. And I'm going to definitely rally troops for potentially a little bit more marketing dollars come budget time.
Is the suggestion here that we look at some of the marketing dollars over there?
Potentially, a combination.
There and put it over
Potentially, yes, because I think that the CVB clearly has a yield.
the extra money that comes with, but if we want to move it around, I'm all for that.
Well, we haven't spent all the money in grants either, and we can look at that. I know that's kind of always a touchy area, but we've got to have tools to be able to attract people and businesses, and marketing will yield those. So great job on this, and I'm going to explore the Prezi a little bit more on the link you gave me, so thanks. Good work.
Thank you for the report. I think it's good. Again, we've gone through this every year, and we tweak it, make minor changes in that, but we're moving forward. I guess everybody knows my feeling in regards to La Quinta being known as part of the greater Palm Springs area, and that I do have a problem with that. I see the one thing that kind of got to me here is on your signature events, we're supporting the Palm Springs Restaurant Week.
Well, it's called Palm Springs Restaurant Week, but it actually involves.
Excuse me?
Yeah, it's actually, that's the title of the event is called the Palm Springs.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Why not the Coachella Valley Restaurant Week?
Well, I actually have a meeting with them next week. I'll glad to bring that up. Gladly bring that up.
Would you
Yes,
please,
I will.
again, like I say, La Quinta is unique, and I want us to have name recognition that people understand that we're part of the Coachella Valley and we're not part of Palm Springs. Palm Springs is part of the Coachella Valley, the same as we are. But we continue to support the image of Palm Springs, where I'm trying to support the image of La Quinta, and at Palm Springs, fine, Steve and that group, they do their great job in that, but we need to do as good a job and promote the city of La Quinta.
We hear you. We agree. We'll make
And
that
I know,
suggestion.
but the problem is we end up accepting this time and time again, and we ought to stand up on our own hind legs and say, come on, the city of La Quinta has just as much to offer as the city of Palm Springs. Well, but I want to keep us equal.
No.
And that. So anyways, again, Thank you very much. And with that, I'm going to recess the city council, and we will try and reconvene about 7 o'clock. Good evening. Thank you all for being here. At this time, I'll reconvene the City Council meeting for May 6, 2013. Normally, we would go ahead and open it up to public hearings. Let me say, is anybody wishing to speak on an item which is on the agenda? I'd ask that you please fill out a request to speak form. It's a form like this. And give it to our city clerk. At this time, anybody wishing to speak on an item not on the agenda may do so. Seeing none, then we'll move on to back to our study session, and we'll continue on with item number 4, and that's a discussion options for landscape and maintenance of the North La Quinta parkways maintained by Lighting and Landscape District 89-1. Staff report, please, Tim.
Thank you, Your Honorable Mayor, City Council members. Back in March, we had a study session to talk about the Lighting and Landscape Maintenance District that has since the late 1990s been run at a deficit. Laws changed since the district was formed in 1989 that restricted the city's ability to increase the rate of assessment without a citywide vote. But of course, costs went up in the meantime, and so since 1997, we've had up to $1 million deficit at times. This year, we're anticipating about a $600,000 deficit. So to address part of that challenge, last spring, the council directed staff to conduct an outreach program to North La Quinta, primarily because of the proximity of their parkways and entryways and the special benefit that they receive from the district. We talked to those homeowners through a series of workshops about maybe possible improvements, both on the capital side to improve the look of the landscaping, and also on the maintenance side, what they would be willing to pay through an additional assessment district in order to have a higher level of maintenance on these parkways and entryways. And last February, we conducted a survey after the conclusion of the outreach to the 11 subdivisions, and it came back pretty conclusively that there wasn't an interest, at least by a majority, in any one of the subdivisions to pay for any additional improvements or a higher level of maintenance. So at that point, that pretty much concluded the March 18th study session. The council asked us to look at options for the parkways and entryways, maybe to improve the look and also find a way to reduce the landscape requirements and also the utility costs, primarily water for the plants. Also, the question of ownership of these landscape lots came up, and staff was asked to investigate and report back on how that could be clarified. So with that in mind, I've gone back first to look at some options for the parkways and entryways. And the first option, we're looking, I came up with these names and also the photos here, so any credit or blame belongs to me as far as how I came up with these options and decided what to call them. So the first option we looked at was something that would basically minimize landscape and utility costs and still look good and give a nice contrast to the coloring within the parkways. Right now, the landscaping is really what presents the interest, if you will, in the different parkways, in that you have different kinds of plants with different kind of colors. I've noticed in going to other communities, upscale desert communities, that sometimes rocks, different kinds of colors of DG, and other hardscape can be used also to create the same look. Of course, you don't always get the vertical element like you do with trees and so forth, but the advantage is that by eliminating irrigated plants altogether, which is always the most expensive component to the maintenance and, of course, the water costs on any landscape project, you can really reduce the maintenance cost on an annual basis by going to that. So these are some examples that I pulled from Arizona DOT, showing some of the things that they've done. If you've been through on the 10 through Scottsdale and Phoenix, you've seen these kind of geometric patterns that they can make in different colored DG. You know, flagstone, different kinds of boulders and stuff are introduced to create some kind of a different look and make it look interesting. The installation cost we're estimating for the 500,000 or so square feet of parkways that we're talking about here would be about 1.4 million, very much a ballpark estimate at this point. And but the annual maintenance and utility cost is very low, because we would just go back in, stabilize the DG at least once a year, maybe twice a year if it's kind of in a high traffic area. You know, touch up the DG to make it, you know, make it look good again. And so we're anticipating a maintenance cost of somewhere around that for these parkways. We probably wouldn't do this near the school sites, for instance, where we know that the school children traffic right through the middle of these things, and so maybe that wouldn't be a good strategy for there. But other areas, particularly I think where you have steeper slopes where you don't have a lot of people walking on, this might be a good solution for them. The other challenge with this particular palette, if we did no irrigated landscaping, is that we'd have to see if it meets our minimum requirements in the municipal code, and we'd have to make maybe some adjustments in the code if that was the direction that the city council wanted to go. So my next
Tim?
Yes.
Oh, staying with that.
Okay.
I noticed that you didn't utilize any artificial turf in that. Is that because of cost?
You know, the artificial turf, I think it looks good in certain applications and not so great in others. I think we could do spots of artificial turf within this plant palette.
Well, it gives it a little bit more color,
right,
of course.
And probably not drive up costs. The other concern I had was that, you know, when we've used it in medians, it's somewhat protected because it's out in the middle of the roadway where cars are whizzing by, and we still had some artificial turf stolen and people in that situation.
Can you believe it? Yes, out on 54.
Right, so I don't know, you know, we might have a vandalism problem if we try to put it in the parkways, especially where we got a lot of school traffic, it might walk off, so, but I think it could be added to your.
Yeah, under certain conditions, specific aesthetics and that it
right.
might be more palatable to people looking at it.
Certainly. The next landscape scheme I came up with, I'm calling it Oasis. It's basically very similar to the last one, except that we would basically use the existing irrigation system, but only to water plants at like maybe 50 or 60 foot intervals. And we would use very drought tolerant landscaping. I mean, we could go to palms, but there's some challenges, I can just tell you, with the palm trees that are out in the parkways. We get complaints by people who have pools on the other side of the walls. And so, you know, so we might not want to do palms even with this plan, just because of that aspect. But certainly grasses or ocotillo plants, you know, to give a vertical element, but space them out far enough so that you're not spending a lot of money on the watering of the plant, but you're getting some greenery or, you know, some vertical element, and combine that with the DG, where you can see some of the colored stones and stuff that were put in. That it again adds interest. Now this is a little bit higher installation cost. It's about 1.9 million is what we're estimating, and then the maintenance cost a little bit higher. You're going to have some utility cost because of the irrigation. So it's a little more expensive than the last option, but you know, it does give you some landscaping in the area. And then finally, the last one is really I call it La Quinta Lush, but it's basically the standard parkway parkway or median landscaping that we've been putting in, I'd say, for the last 4 or 5 years. It's a full landscape palette, palms, palo verdes, drought-tolerant plants, the multicolored DG, and so on, that adds a lot of interest, but of course, it's a lot more maintenance and water intensive. The good thing is that you are still using drought-tolerant landscaping, so it's gonna meet the CVWD requirements, but it's because you're putting in a lot more, landscape and hardscape, the cost is quite a bit higher, close to $9 million for the entire remodel of all those areas. And the cost is gonna be, we're not gonna save much on maintenance and utilities if we went back to this. But just for comparison purposes, I included that. Of course, there's lots of permutations that could be made in combinations. If the council wanted us to investigate one of these and really bring back a design, I would recommend we do an RFP and get a real landscape architect, not someone looking at Google pictures for ideas, to actually come in and bring in something that you could really hard cost. So then the next thing we looked at, and
Can I ask a question first,
sure.
Mr. Mayor? On the 3 items that you just presented, I would have liked to have seen a breakdown of the cost per unit that's out there. Like this last one, the 875 million and the 135,000 annual maintenance.
Right.
How would that break down? How many houses, was that divided by?
Well, we know there's, I think, 1,666 homeowners in the North La Quinta tracts. So we could come up with a cost. Particularly for this auction was kind of what we were talking to the homeowners about, and that's what generated those
Right.
levels of cost.
52.
Well, just doing a simple division,
Right,
it's
right.
a little over, it's like $5,300 for the capital cost,
For the capital cost?
Right,
It'd be
right.
like $5,000 a unit.
something like
Yeah,
that.
and then what was the maintenance, do we know?
I think for something like this,
What was the number,
135,000 divided by 1666.
And I know that you,
About $81 additional cost
okay.
per
Thank
year.
you. Thank you.
But this is roughly the Cadillac option
Right, I got you.
that we presented at the last meeting. So looking at the ownership question, the map that we presented last time, this is the same map. We've got kind of a hodgepodge of some of the improvements are accepted, some are not. Some have been offered for dedication and just never accepted by the city. That's basically the majority of them. Those parkways are shown in red on the diagram, and yeah, there's a bigger version of this in your council report. The question is whether it's worthwhile basically to track down the owners, make offers to actually purchase and get a fee ownership in these parcels, or do we do what we normally do? Most of what the city has control over in terms of roadways and parkways and so forth are just dedicated easements.
Yeah,
And so what I would recommend is that we just go back to the track maps that made these offerings of dedication years ago and just accept them.
Right.
And then we
Resurrect
have
them.
virtually the same control as if we own the parcels. And I think Kathy would agree with that, that's probably the easiest thing to do at this point.
I gather we can't find the owners, and that they're no longer in business, they're gone, they've disappeared. And it'd be difficult to try and get them, because if you could get them, you could come back and say, hey, you owe us for this because we've been doing it and that was your responsibility.
Well,
But I think we bought that responsibility.
Probably, it's
Yeah,
been
well,
a
and
long
also-
time, a lot of years.
Also, we incorporated the areas into the future L&L reports. That was really the key thing that, said, hey, we were gonna maintain these areas. In what you said, Mr. Mayor, is exactly correct. Most of the entities are not either around anymore. They're LLCs that were just put together just to develop the projects, and then, I'm sure that they long ago expired. Rather than, go through the work of trying to track down, well, who became the owner, successors of that LLC or something along those lines, it's just easier just to accept them, accept the dedication and move on. And that would be my recommendation. If
That would be the simple way of doing it.
I'd agree to that too.
Okay. So then, that's really that really concludes my report. I think there's two particular things, and you just answered one of them, what to do with the landscape lots in terms of acceptance of the improvements or try to acquire them in fee. And so it sounds like we want to just accept them, those offers. The landscape improvements, though, we have, 3 that I brought up, but of course there's quite a few more that could be, that we could do, or combinations or something along those lines. In terms of the capital improvement program, I want to mention that I did talk to Ted Pritchett at CVWD, and they did do a large-scale rebate with the city of Rancho Mirage not too long ago on one of their projects. They offer turf rebates of up to $1 a square foot, basically, but they also will rebate if you convert some of the spray nozzles that I told you are such a problem with erosion. They'll do, if you do special, the clocks and so forth for them that seasonally adjust, which I think our controllers already do that anyway. There's rebates there, but their rebate with the city of Rancho Mirage was just shy of $100,000, and so if we were to come up with maybe a 5-year plan to do these areas, we could probably expect to get something every year back from CVWD as part of the program, because they sounded really interested when I mentioned where we're trying to do these conversions. And there's at least 2 parkways, Acacia and La Quinta Highlands, that are all turf, and I know that they would like to see those replaced with drought-tolerant landscape.
Sounds like we would too, though.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Tim, would it be your suggestion or recommendation that where we have landscaped right-of-ways right now, that you would go in and just skin it all off and start from scratch if we went to, say, the Scottsdale plan?
I would look at each parkway individually, because
Just take them one at a time?
There's some that really, I think like Rancho Ocotillo's Fred Waring frontage and their Adams Street frontage is probably in one of the worst conditions out of all the parkways out there. I would probably recommend we do that there. But then if you go down Adams Street, some of it looks actually pretty good, and it's already in.
And there's healthy trees and that within them, and you'd hate to get rid of those just to make sure that everything is a total desert scape.
Unless they're problem trees, and we're getting complaints anyway, then maybe we replace them with something that's a little lower, keep the existing irrigation system, especially if it's already drought tolerant anyway, put new DG out there and call it good. I mean, so there's, I think we could, I think we'd like to look at them, or I would recommend we look at them on an individual basis.
Just take one at a time and go through it. And you can incorporate leaving certain trees, certain plants, and then go into the desert scape to supplement whatever you take out.
Right.
Well,
Yeah,
we also
sounds fair.
talked about the fact that we had several residents that offered to serve on a committee to provide input and communicate with residents. And if we're looking at these developments on potentially case by case on what currently exists, perhaps that's a good use of their involvement to determine what works in what area.
And get the homeowner's recommendation as to what supports, their needs at their community.
I don't know that, I mean, I love the idea of, looking with the CVWD rebates. I mean, like you just mentioned, there's that area with all that turf that could easily come out. I don't know that I'd want to go the Barron Scottsdale type of design. I mean, again, like you mentioned, you got a lot of plants there already. What plants can we keep so we don't have to pay for replacement? What can you do with the existing irrigation so we don't have to replace that as well? And then I like your idea about doing it over a 5-year plan. We don't have to put millions of dollars at it right off the bat. We can do a step process, and I like that idea. In conjunction with, we got to still talk about the landscape and lighting district and its position and what we're going to do with that. I think it's too, we already approved the current engineering plan and whatnot, on the consent calendar today. So we've got to look at that coming back for, I guess the next vote would be in 2016. At this point, that'd be the next one to look at, cleaning up the L&L and its position. But I like where you're going with this, Tim, and I think there's a lot we can do simple and without too much upfront, $5 million, so to speak. I mean, some of these plans.
Yeah, that figure of installation took care of everything that we needed to direct our attention to.
Well, right.
Okay, so basically, if we kept some of what is there, then that installation cost should come down from what you've listed here.
It should, sure.
Okay.
And I'm not a fan of Scottsdale. I think it's too barren, but 50 feet apart seems like a long way between plants. I mean, how far is that from, Rita? I don't know. It's just seems pretty far. So but 8 point some odd million, that's ridiculous. I just think, because we scaled back sidewalks versus medians is a different visual in terms of what we were doing in Washington or the major arterials in 111. But I think somewhere between La Quinta Lush and Oasis, we can sprinkle some things without super expensive boulders. They're pretty pricey. And the Palo Verde trees, are those the wispy ones that the motorhomes then get and they end up getting trimmed like this? Are they the kind of the wispy?
The green trunks.
The green trunks.
Green
They're
trunks,
blooming
okay.
yellow right now.
Yeah, that's high maintenance, yeah.
Palo Verde. Good. Any other questions? Oh, Christie, yeah.
Yes. You talked about the municipal code when you were talking about the Scottsdale. What were you referring to specifically?
Well, generally, staff has interpreted that the minimal standard includes some landscaping, irrigated landscaping in the palette, and not just allow DG or something like that to constitute minimum landscaping. And so we'd have if that was the council direction, I think we would have to come back and make some modifications to that minimum standard so that we could do the Scottsdale approach, if that's what the consensus was.
Okay. I just wondered what the reference was there. I appreciate your work on this. And I know that you're not a landscape architect. So what can we do? Are we talking about doing RFP now? Seeing what the costs really are, or no?
Well, it's got to
No.
come back. Because this is just a study session.
Right, okay. But you did want an opinion, right? One way or
Right,
the other.
that we're seeking items in terms of your direction or thoughts, and then we would come back with like an RFP or with something other of that nature.
So remind me what the maintenance cost of the Bear Creek Trail is, 6 miles? 30,000 a year? 80 approximately?
Yeah.
Something like that, and it's really lush. And granted, we're talking about a lot bigger area, but when you look at some of these maintenance is only 40,000, that just either doesn't seem like enough for all of those areas, or there's just nothing to
Well,
maintain.
Yeah.
We're raking
And I
low.
think this is what a landscape architect tell us. I appreciate his numbers.
Yeah, I've got a question. I think the first thing that we need to get is consensus on even getting an RFP, which is saying that we are committed to the installation costs here, and I'm not committed to that.
But we don't know what they are.
Well,
That's why we do an
but if
RFP.
you- But if you use, his rough draft here, I'm still
Yeah.
not committed that we should be putting out that kind of money. I mean, we've gotta go to the assessment first and see if we're gonna be able to get an assessment out there.
Well, we
Well,
don't
I'm
know
not
how
on
much an
that page with
assessment
you at
would
all.
be if we don't know what we're gonna do with it.
Exactly, you've gotta know your cost up front. But I'm not in favor of an assessment for them. I think if you wanna do it, you do it citywide. We've been
Yeah,
doing
we
this for a
sure
number of
have.
years. We
Yeah.
own this. We do, we own this. So,
I've said that.
well, and, so then basically what you're saying is that we wait another 2.5 years for this to go on a 2016 ballot?
No.
No,
Okay, what are you saying then?
I think we should move forward and go for, an overall assessment.
And include all three of the presentations here, the Scottsdale, the Oasis, and
No, an overall citywide assessment, I think is what Don is talking about.
Yeah, I don't think we're committed to one of the three, because everyone is gonna be different, because we're talking about keeping some of the plants and stuff that is there. So if you're doing that, you can't really pick, we're gonna go to Scottsdale, or we're gonna go to this one, or we're gonna go to that one, because until something is laid out as to what we're gonna keep and what we're gonna remove, and sometimes we may not wanna remove anything.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to point out, there's been a couple references to waiting to 2016 relating to the assessment district, and I wanted to remind the council that the assessment district is a by mail, and it's not related to the November elections.
But if I could, Mr. Mayor, the L&L and changing the landscape and lighting district, would that be 2016?
No, it would be by mail.
So
Well,
we
it
could
depends
do that.
upon which one you wanna do. We talked about general tax, that's not by mail.
No, that, yeah.
If you do a general tax, or a special tax, you're going to be doing it at a regular election. It's not
Yeah.
just a a property owner, vote.
So a landscape and lighting increase, whatever that number would be, we could do by mail at any
No.
point in time?
Yes.
Yes, because if you're going to make an amendment to the district, you would be doing that. If you wanted to do a separate tax, like a parcel tax, a sales tax, a user tax, and use the funds for landscaping, then that would be going on a regular ballot, an election ballot that would be tied, depending on which, if you went general or special, have to be held in at the same November election that the council members are up.
Right.
And that would take a simple majority?
That we will discuss in the next item. Yeah, so we will get on that. But the other thing that I wanted to mention when we're talking about changing the landscape and lighting district, the one thing that we've been talking about here for the past 4 or 5 years is that if we change it, we have to do a benefit analysis. So those who are closer to things that are being maintained by the district will pay more than those who are away. So there's no more straight one size fits all.
Is that per Wildan and Associates?
That's per Proposition 218, which is in the California State Constitution.
I realize that, I know that. I just didn't want to make sure that it's more than just Wildan and Associates.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and that's all well and good, but if we chose, because we discussed this at the last meeting, and I know we're gonna talk about it a little bit more, but if we chose to do a general tax, then we're not going by individual house.
That's correct, that's flat.
Okay.
Depending on sales, DOT, however you want to do it, or parcel.
Right.
So getting back to our study session item of how to maintain the parkways and roadways and that have, had a little demise.
I think we have some speakers here. Maybe you want to hear from them?
Well, no, we're still dealing with staff. And You've got a question,
Well,
Stan?
yeah, I'm ready for an RFP to get somewhere in the middle of a design that has a little bit more, but not too much. With resident input. I think resident input is, yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay.
I agree with that.
No other questions of staff? We do have a request to speak. Jeff, you want to come on? And give us your name and address for the record.
Yes, my name is Jeff Smith. I live at 54631 Avenida Alvarado in La Quinta. And Mr. Mayor and members of the council, I'd like to speak on behalf of myself and the Cove Neighborhood Association, who've been concerned about this issue for some time. And one of the things we're concerned about is that the plan for all of these projects and how it's going to be paid for, the status quo of having things continue the way they are is, we believe, fundamentally unfair. You know, we all pay taxes, we all pay into our assessment districts, and it is our impression that this money is to be used for landscape, for medians and parks and other things that would benefit the whole city, or at least our whole assessment district, not for entrance amenities for privately owned projects and developments. We've had these, you know, quote, special benefits, close quotes, for around 10 developments
Many
for
years.
a long time, and it was a mistake. It slipped by. In the days of money being available, we could live with it, but now we can't. Things have changed, times have changed, and I think we need to look very hard at the method for payment of these amenities if we're going to improve them. I'm concerned about how we pay for maintaining what we have right now. It's no longer sustainable, I believe, for the city to continue to pay for this the way they are currently. And of course, the folks in the developments, they've been getting this help from the city for years and years and years. Of course they don't want to pay for what they've been getting, not for free, but the slice of the slice of the landscape assessment district that would have gone for developments all over the city or all over the district was used for their front doorstep. They should pay their own way. And even though they don't want to, we all need to understand that times have changed. I don't believe that we are tied into what we've done for the last several years. So basically, I just wanted to restate my case that the way we are doing it now is fundamentally unfair, and we need to have the folks in these areas we need to come up with a way for them, over time probably, to pay for their share of this development. If we're going to improve it, great, so long as they're going to pay for these improvements and it not strip away from the other funds used for development throughout the entire city or in that one landscaping district. And that's all I had to say. Thank you very much for your attention.
Okay, thanks, Jeff.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay. That was all the request I had to speak, so we'll move on.
Yeah, I'm really concerned that there isn't anybody here tonight. I mean, we said over and over and over and over again that we were gonna have this meeting, and I don't understand where they are. Or why they're not here.
Well, I know a couple people that I found in the parking lot after the last meeting because they thought it started at 7 instead of 4. Hello, Starks. And I think the reality is, when we got the surveys back that showed that nobody was willing to pay something, it kind of killed the possibility of putting something on a ballot right away. So then it comes back to, what do we do to get them in a condition that meets the standards of La Quinta, because we still need to retain the property values in those areas and get something in place, while we then go to the next study session item, which will probably be a citywide discussion versus a specific parcel area discussion.
Well, we're going out
in
to
terms.
RFP, moves this one on for that, let's do it, move on.
I agree.
Well, again, what's the RFP gonna do? I'm sorry, we know what the RFP is gonna do. What are we gonna tell them? What are we gonna say, all right, we want an RFP on what?
Not as-
Removing
not
all the
as
turf
barren as
somewhere in Oasis land?
Scottsdale,
I don't
but-
know.
Landscape architects, we give them the areas and let them move forward on it. But
Or we
recommend
say
what they
it's,
think.
or we say it's 2.5 million or less in investment,
And maybe that's the
and-
key. We say,
and
all right, if we
80,000
put
or less in
$2
maintenance.
million at this over a 5-year period, what would you suggest we do? Given we can get some grants from CVWD by removing, the turf. Is that reasonable, Tim?
I think it is. I think if you're leaning one way or another though on what, because even there are differences in the way these areas have been maintained or landscaped originally. And so I was trying to give, if we're gonna do an RFP, I wanted to give them a little bit better idea of what direction we thought would look best for these parkways. And so that's why I came up with these 3 schemes. I think it would be helpful to tell them, hey, we're not looking to do the Scottsdale look, but maybe it's the Oasis Plus,
Right.
Oasis Lodge.
Oasis Plus.
Oasis
whatever.
Lodge.
Oasis Lodge.
So something a little bit more than 50 foot on center plants, but the idea is to try and use the existing irrigation.
Sure.
But do more with the hardscape.
Yeah.
Sure.
The rocks, the cobble, and the DG is.
Cut down on the
is
maintenance.
what we want to emphasize in order to keep the maintenance costs down and the water costs down, so.
Right.
Anyway, we'll
That-
let Quinta
that I think
Lush
gives
at the
them a little
Oasis
better
price.
Better idea, and as we get into it, we can certainly talk about what we were planning, what we're budgeting, and obviously we need to meet a certain budget, and if $2 million is approximately the amount over 5 years that we think we can spend on this, I could include that, to give them a better idea, or if that's the.
And hopefully that 2 million is after rebates from CVWD, and removing the turf, because there is quite a bit of turf out there. Like you were
Right.
saying on Fred Waring and in Adams, there is quite a bit there.
Right, yeah, even on Miles too.
Yeah. Right.
So, if that's what you want included in an RFP, I think I could bring something back in a
Okay.
couple weeks that can get us there.
Okay.
If that's the consensus.
Yeah, I like it.
Okay. All right. Okay, we'll move on to the next item, and that's discussion and provide direction regarding revenue enhancement options. Staff report, please, Chris.
Yes, thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. In 2012, the city initiated an effort at looking at all available revenue, and that effort was initiated in order to address the then $2.1 million structural deficit that the city had experienced as a result of the economic downturn and adjustment to the loss of redevelopment. So that structural deficit was ultimately addressed by reduction in expenditures. And at the same time, staff initiated efforts to look at revenue. So this is a continuation of those discussions. So what we'll do today is go briefly through revenue available to cities and then break down and look at taxes. So the primary ways cities bring revenue in to support city services are through fees. So in last year, the city took action to update its fee schedule and make it more adaptable to today. So with fees, we can only charge for the cost of providing the service. And prior to the action, we had a cost recovery rate of about 39%. And then because of that update in fees, we now have a cost recovery rate of 88%, which means we're recovering much more of the cost in providing those services, like inspections and permit issuance and the like.
So, I'm gonna, can I interrupt, please?
Sure.
With a quick question on that one. What would it take to get to 100%, and do most cities recover a full 100% of their costs?
So it's definitely the discretion of the council. At the time, the target rate was set. It was a blended rate across the departments. So we do have 100% cost recovery for the building and planning functions, not for the other ones. So in blending them together,
It gets the 88.
It's the 88.
Okay, thanks.
But in looking, we can, this is why putting this forward to kind of revisit those conversations. In addition, another form in bringing in revenues through property assessments. So it's been discussed, prior to this, and property assessments are like landscape and lighting districts. And with them, you have to do the benefit study, which looks at the benefit a property owner receives for that service or amenity, and then they're charged correspondingly. So in that system, you don't have uniform rate. The rate will vary based upon the benefit a property owner receives. And then taxes. So taxes are distinct from the other two in the sense that they're specifically allowed to raise local revenue for city services. So in going through taxes, there's two different categories, right? A general and a special tax. So with general taxes, the funds are unrestricted, and it requires a majority vote of the electorate for it to pass. For special, the special tax has a specific purpose. So if the measure was designed to support, a specific service, then it would be considered a special tax and therefore require 2/3 vote of the people. In California, there are a defined amount of taxes available, and so I'll go through them briefly. We have a parcel tax, which is a charge to real property. A Melrose Community Facilities District, CFD, which is also charged to real property. That could be used for public facilities as well as services. The add-on sales and use tax. So at retail locations, everybody currently collects the 8%. This would be an add-on to the existing by the state. Transient occupancy tax, which is charged for people occupying a lodging facility for 30 days or less, so meaning on hotels and the like. And utility users, this is a tax on customers' utility bills as a part of the normal payment. So we have the two categories, general and special, and then we have the types of taxes that I just went through. And then in looking at a tax measure, some of the elements to consider are whether it's a general or special, the type, setting a date in mind with respect to of that item, conducting a community survey in order to gauge the interests of people living in the community and to see at what levels they would be willing, if at all, to support a type of tax measure. The creation of an advisory committee or a city council subcommittee to assist in the effort. And then in looking at measures such as these, the consideration of sunset provisions. And so sunset provisions are that it expires over a certain period of time. So the timeline generally for a general tax must be consolidated with the regularly scheduled election. And when that process goes forward, the city council, if they choose to place a measure on the ballot, has to consider the item and submit the materials to the registrar of voters by the first week of August in order for it to make the timeline to get on there. And then it's voted on at the election. A special tax, however, doesn't have that same time requirement, but does follow that same process of needing to have an action to place it on a ballot for election. So with that said, I'm more than happy to go back to a couple of pieces, but that concludes my report, and happy to answer any questions.
Good. Thanks, Chris.
Sure.
Questions of staff?
So on page 256, under the elements of a tax measure, are we able to add I don't want to call it cost of living, but some sort of little inflationary whatever, so we can bump this up as we need? Is that what it is, cost of living? Oh.
Yes, I'm seeing a nod by the city attorney. Correct, we can.
Okay, to any of these?
Correct.
Okay.
The property
well, no,
assessments.
I know that, thank you. Okay, in terms of the survey, I don't think we need to spend money on that. Just, that's how I feel about it. We're in a really, if we chose to do this and put it on the November ballot, we're in a real time crunch in terms of educating the community and putting a subcommittee together and whatever else. The other thing that I want to say is that in light of what Mr. Smith said earlier, there wasn't a mention by him of the fact that there's been a $35 fee, isn't that what it is, on our tax rolls for a gazillion years, which does not even begin, as we all know, to cover. So we're going to have a plan for doing what we need to do for those folks who live on the north side of Highway 111. But no matter what we do there, sometime soon, we've got to get this on the ballot and
Yeah.
see if we can't raise that, because it doesn't cover our costs. And that really doesn't have anything, as far as I'm concerned, to do with what's going on the north side. I see those as two different issues
Yeah.
completely. So that was a question and a comment. That's it.
Good, thanks. Lee, anything?
Not at this time.
I just want to make sure I understand where Christie is. Are you talking about additional money in the assessment that we already have instead of the $35?
Yeah.
Okay, well,
Citywide.
but there's always been a discussion there that if we put that assessment out and didn't get the votes for it, that we could lose the $35. So this would be a second assessment, not an amendment to the assessment.
However that is termed, we don't really need to roll the dice and not have any money at all, because
Right.
then we wouldn't be able to maintain anything, and then we would not look like La
Right.
Quinta.
So I'm just trying to find out.
No,
if-
that's exactly, thank you
so
for clarifying.
So you're looking for the second assessment
Mhm.
that is irrespective of lots that are being taken care of and not.
You already own that, we have to do it,
Yeah.
you know, that's how it is. But yes, it is irrespective of that. That's a plan that we're gonna move forward with, we're doing our RFP and whatever.
So
but
the
yes,
assumption is that they are paying $35, those folks.
everybody is.
Right, and if we were to do a second one,
Mhm.
and we, made that $35.
Well, we need to put the pencil to that.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
see
Well,
what-
and over the years, I.
To see what covers us.
Yeah, numerous times the pencils have been put to
If I
that, so-
may, though, keep in mind, we cannot do a flat assessment district, period,
Right.
anymore.
No, I know
So when we put the pencil to that, we will have certain areas, depending on what's in the district, will pay more than others.
Okay, but I'm not talking about an assessment. Am I talking about an assessment? Is that what we have to, that
You could-
$35?
You could do a citywide parcel tax that has a flat rate.
Yes.
And
Okay.
then if you could do that and either designate that the money is going to be used for landscaping, then you would need a 2/3 vote.
Right. But
Or
if
you could just do a straight parcel tax.
Parcel tax all requires 2/3 vote.
a straight
Correct.
parcel tax does?
Straight parcel tax
So-
requires a 2/3
so-
vote.
That's what from the last meeting
Yeah.
to this
Right.
one has
It's-
killed me on the parcel tax.
Okay, so then if our best chance, I'm just thinking off the top of my head here, our best chance to get this passed is to do a general tax,
Correct.
which does not require 2/3, and we can use it however we want to. We can't designate, in other words, which
Right.
makes
The
me.
generals that we're looking at are UUT, utility users.
Yeah, I never did that.
And what's the other one?
The sales-
T-
the additional
TOT and
tax.
sales
Additional
tax.
sales tax. So it's either raising the sales tax by 1%,
Mhm.
Or
which is
whatever.
being done in quite a few communities around the state, but in the Coachella Valley, Palm Springs is done, and Cathedral City is done.
But add-on sales tax brings in a lot of revenue,
It does.
Yeah, yeah.
just 1/4%.
Yeah, 1/4%.
Yeah. So those are the two that would be a 50% vote, right? And
As long as you weren't saying that you were going to use the money specifically for landscaping.
as long as we didn't say that.
As long as
That's
you,
correct.
you
That
could
was the
include that in a
discussion.
laundry list of things.
Right.
Correct.
Right,
But
but that
just-
was
yeah, general.
the big
Go in the
question
general
that we
fund.
had at the last
Yeah.
meeting
Mhm.
with folks sitting here trying to get them to understand that we could not in writing guarantee that the money would go to lighting and landscaping, that they just have to trust that that's what the
It
city.
just goes to the general fund.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's a general tax, right? Is that what we're talking about?
Mm-hmm.
And it has to go with a regularly scheduled election, or we could, except in cases of emergency declared by a unanimous vote of us. Does that mean that we can have a special election just for that?
We have to we would have to state that we're in a fiscal emergency.
Okie dokie.
And-
Never
Well,
mind.
there's a few things here that could get us in a fiscal emergency.
Why would we have to say we're in a fiscal emergency?
If you were trying to not do it at the general rule is that you have to do it at the November election at which
Mhm.
council members are up.
Okay.
And to get,
Do we have time to do this? Let's do it.
For 2016?
That's the one I
No,
think.
sure,
that we should
no.
be
I don't think we have time.
I think so too.
I think we should be looking at a raise in the sales tax.
Sales tax, sure,
Okay.
absolutely.
And we can get it done, we get it on there by November, and it's a simple majority vote.
And probably the vast majority that would be paying for this are not citizens of La Quinta. So all these.
That's right, we have a lot of people
A lot
come
of
here and
people that
shop.
come in and shop and spend the tax dollars. We, at least our citizens, have the opportunity to say, well,
Well, what it'll do, it'll chase more of them to the internet.
oh geez, well, I don't want to do that.
Yeah, that's what I'm worried about too. Well,
But
I
a
don't
quarter
have.
of a percent is nothing.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with the sales tax. I think that's gonna be the simplest way. Again, I wanna keep it simple. I really wanna
Yeah,
keep this simple for everybody. I'm concerned if we try to go another assessment for the L&L, that people are gonna look at as a North La Quinta issue, and I don't wanna go there. I don't wanna
Well,
create a north and south issue.
Yeah.
I think a simple sales tax increase, I think a quarter point is gonna be fine. I'd hate to go to more than a quarter point.
Well, I don't know, a half point, you know, because we've got several issues with lighting and landscaping.
Well, now remember, lighting and landscaping is only for lighting and landscaping. It is not for the parks. It was never intended for the parks. It was never structured to cover the parks. We ourselves try to throw the parks into it.
Correct.
And create this big negative.
If we do a sales tax increase, it goes into our general fund.
Yes, it does.
And then we
can
take
put
it out of the
where we
general
want,
fund.
Yes, we
Which
do.
would presumably be into the park.
Well, into the parks or police or the new CalPERS calculations or the new capital calculations. I mean, Tim wants to build a whole new freeway.
So that's what we should
I
do to
don't,
happen.
I wouldn't, again, how are we gonna explain to the public why we need a half a point of $3.5 million versus keeping it, I think we should only go with a quarter point. It keeps it simple. And I think people can appreciate what we're doing without saying their extra cost out of their wallet is gonna be substantial. And plus, our retailers, whether it be the auto retailers or others, they can deal with a quarter point. If we raise it a half a point, is that gonna push people outside of our city for major purchases?
What are the other?
I don't think so,
If you know what other cities?
For sales tax?
Yes.
Both Palm Springs and Quintero City have one in place at 1%, each one.
They did 1%.
Which it'll
Measure J
be-
was
They did a
1%.
Total of 9
12%.
for each city.
Total of 9%?
Correct.
Okay, so they're gonna be at 9. Do you have any idea?
Everybody else is at
Everybody
8.
else is at 8.
8, okay.
So for those folks in the audience that may not have the report in front of you, a 1/4% increase generates 1.75 million a year. A half increase generates 3.5 million a year. 3/4 generates 5.25 million a year, and a full 1% would generate 7 million a year.
And what I would suggest is before we would settle in on one of these, let us do some financial projections, because we haven't done that. Because one of the things you also need to keep in mind is certainly there's a threshold or a pain threshold beyond which a voter would not approve things.
Mm-hmm.
But if the city is going to go to the effort and expend the political capital to take something like this forward,
Right.
we should, as we said earlier, we can't do a cost of living adjustment on sales tax.
Right.
So then you look at, what is that threshold that you can get it high enough so if and when all these changes occur, we're not sitting back someday going, gee, if we only would have done this.
And I guess the other question is, who decides how long it lasts? When you talk about sunsetting,
The city council,
so we then say we need this for 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, 25 years?
correct.
Okay, well, that's another thing that we've got to consider, voter input.
And
I mean,
that's
it's-
why, with our financial modeling, we want to look at these pieces before
Yeah,
we
just-
settle in
yeah,
on
I
something.
mean, I would ask and hope that we don't raise it any more than we have to.
Yeah.
California is already the most highest taxes in this country when you add them all together. And I really don't want to add to that problem that we've created in this state. So I would ask, please, let us not raise this any more than we absolutely have to.
Yeah.
Understanding the future, understanding costs will go up in the future, but hopefully as TOT goes up in the future and sales tax goes up in the future, and we continue to control our own cost of operations in the future, as we've done in this last 2
Increased
years.
development,
I don't wanna
that's
end
gonna
up
bring it
raising
in.
$5 million. Oh, well, hell, we got $5 million. Let's go to town.
No,
We've gotta maintain our conservative nature here and not raise anything more than we absolutely have to.
Lee, we have more negatives facing us going forward than positives, and that's the first time in our lifetime on this council that that's happened.
You're right, I
So,
agree with
mean,
that.
the
I agree with that.
negatives,
The economy's
you know,
different.
They go from prevailing wage costs to PERS and the problems there, the $10 million sheet fence.
Yes.
I mean, there's more negatives.
Yes.
And the, not being able, if that should, well, the resolution's already passed, not being able to have contractors.
Yeah, but that was just a resolution,
I know,
but yes.
it's still
Yes,
on
and that's
other
where
minds.
prevailing
And
wage
we know
comes.
public safety is going up.
And public safety. So, I guess then, you know, to do your study with your team, Frank, let's not raise it too
I
much.
have one more question on utility,
Mhm.
because you've got the user's tax, but there was something called a PEG tax that we can just automatically do to Verizon or Time Warner Cable, and nobody has to vote on it, and you just get an extra
Right, that's
buck?
that's an existing state law, and so what it does is it adds up to 3%, but specifically for public education and governmental access programming. So it does have a state law provision for that purpose.
So we would do that if we were trying to videotape and televise our council meetings.
And that's where it came up before, right? And
Right.
is it a
But it
buck
can
a
only be
household?
used for that, period.
Correct.
And it can only be used for the equipment associated with that, not the operations once the equipment's installed.
What was that dollar amount?
It was up to 3% of the cable TV and Verizon bill. And it has a sunset that once you get your capital necessary to retrofit your chambers to do, then it's gone.
But that was that's another revenue, I'm just saying, that's another revenue source that's out there.
But not for this.
Not for that, I'm just saying, in addition to, as we're exploring different economic drivers from before.
But it really, in essence, isn't, because you have to do a capital outlay and then it's gone. So it's really not a revenue source. It has to be spent.
On something that we need to have in part of our CIP. And I'm just saying, if that's yet another alternative to the separate utility users tax, which I don't necessarily support, I think the sales has got to be the way we go. We've already got the TOT basically got increased to a certain degree, not to us, but with the TMD, that extra 1% is being infused back into the economy through marketing efforts through the CBB. So, you know, I wouldn't want to mess with TOT right away, right now either. And Melrose, no. Parcel tax, no.
Frank, can
Special
you bring
tax,
this
no.
back to us?
Sales tax is the only way.
As a recommendation so that we can look at balancing our budget and, you know, the revenues versus the expenses and that, so that we know just exactly where it is.
Certainly.
But it's gonna have to be soon, though, we're on a, you know.
Yeah.
Very soon,
Yeah.
very soon.
There's an awful lot of that, I think, has already been done, you know, in various other reports, so
Yeah.
cut and paste.
Yeah, what would our deadline be if we were to take it out?
July 15th.
August, so the city council, the
Yeah,
last meeting is July 15th, and then the items need to be to the registrar by August 8th.
So
If-
August
if it
15th
was
is
for
our last
consideration
meeting.
this
Maybe
cycle.
have something at our next meeting so that we can look at it and make a decision.
We have the modeling in place. We just need to, the other thing in the next meetings, we're coming out with our first rendition of the budget. And so we're trying to keep all this stuff balanced. But yes, we'll somehow weave that into the
Ties together.
budget
Oh, our new
discussion.
treasurer can leap tall buildings at a single bound. I'm sure she's ready for this.
Well, and it says that we need to take action, consider the item by July 15th.
Yeah.
So we've got a little bit of time.
The other thing to keep in mind as this comes together is that it is very important to build the community consensus by discussions with the community.
Yes.
And so as we look at tax
Absolutely.
measures, because have done other initiatives in the past and elections, it's important that you all think through how we can start that conversation. because it is rather surprising with all the discussion about the assessment districts, and we have no one here. And a lot of times, if this stuff rolls out without having the community have an understanding, it goes negative in
Very fast.
a blink of the eye.
Very fast. Thank you.
Okay. All right, well, that concludes our study session, so we'll move on to reports and informational items, and that, Linda, you want to start us off?
Sure, I've got CVCC and Energy Environmental this Thursday. So we didn't have a CBB meeting, but we did have the 2014 OASIS Awards last week. Edie and Tustin joined me in that effort to represent La Quinta. And this is the hospitality awards that they do for the frontline staff and backline staff at our resorts and restaurants and hotels, et cetera. And this year they did a little bit something different. We recognized a front and back person, staff from each city. So it wasn't a matter of accepting nominations and just picking one or two folks throughout the valley. Every city got some recognition for their the staff that interacts with the tourists on a day-to-day basis. So very good event, made the honorees feel special. Patrick Evans from CBS was the MC, and it was a great spread at the Agua Caliente Resort in Rancho Mirage. So that's it so far.
Okay.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you, Linda. Christy?
Mine are all coming up. I have one on Monday, I have one on Thursday,
Okay.
and another one probably.
Okay, Terry?
I've got several, I've lost some, I can't find it. I had a league board meeting, a week ago, a week and a half ago, and there was several issues that came up there, and the sales tax is a very big issue that's on our plate at the league. And I think the important thing is that we're gonna have to, I don't know how much of this I said earlier, so stop me if I already said it. These committees around the state so that we can bring the youth, the ones that have these agreements, to the table, because we're not gonna be able to change anything that's taken place in the past. What they did legally, it's theirs, hurrah for them, and, you know, we can't go and say, we don't want you to have that agreement anymore.
Right.
Because we know how we would react. But we've gotta get everybody on the table to move forward, that they won't do that anymore, and if we can get.
Work together.
Work together, and then get a legislator to carry the legislation to change the situs issue.
Sure.
So it's a long road.
So it's a long road, but, you know, the more we talk about it with people, and the more that they hear and understand what the problem is, you know, the more people we can get on board. One of the other issues is that the league is supporting, a proposal by Senate Pro Tem Darrell Steinberg, which should make you all laugh, because nobody usually supports what he comes up with. And this would allocate, this is on cap and trade, and he has come up with something that even RCTC has gotten on board with, because the governor wants to take all of the cap and trade money and put it in his, you know, high-speed rail and, you know, whatever else he has. And he didn't come to our meeting, by the way. He was there almost 45 minutes, so that was interesting. But the proposal caps at 15% instead of the openness on cap and trade. That didn't have a cap on it. But this will cap it, and it will go back to transportation issues, which is where it was supposed to go to.
In the beginning.
In the beginning, so we are supporting that, and I thought I'd pass that on, so if you hear anything about it, you might want to speak positively about it. And then I did get a memo out to you on 42 that is on the ballot, which is it's constitutional amendment, putting certain legislation into the Constitution so that we have to do it, that's not a mandate, and they don't have to fund it. And then, you know, the governor addressed most of those issues, and you know, his favorite response to thing is, show me the money, you know,
Right.
Show me the money. On the pension, continuing reforms on the pension plan, and he says, you know, everybody talks about this pension plan. He says, the state, there's only 20% of our general fund that goes out to payroll. He said the pension problems is all you guys, and us guys were the cities sitting around the table. He says,
your pensions are 80% of your general fund, so you owe all this pension money and not, you know, it's not a state problem. We got about 40 billion debt there, and, you know, we can take care of that. I mean, man, you'd love to sit in on a meeting with him.
Only 40 billion.
And then
You
one
got
of the
41
other,
million from us.
one of the other issues that I wanted to bring back to you folks is that the league has sponsored in conjunction with, let me catch up myself here, with the,
Well, the title says marijuana update, so.
yeah, I know, but it was, yeah, do I need some?
No.
No, it's with the public safety union, if you will, the sheriffs. We are jointly sponsoring the League of Californians and the California Police Chiefs Association, a medical marijuana bill. And the reason that we jointly are sponsoring that is because it specifically addressed all of the issues that cities would want and would want to be taken care of. And so this will be the best thing for cities if it's going to go statewide. Now, if it doesn't go statewide, everybody's sure it's going to go statewide this year because of everything's happening nationally on this. And of course, that's a revenue enhancement.
According to Desert
Yeah, according to Desert Hot Springs.
No, according to Palm Springs and a lot of other cities that are doing it. But yes, Desert Hot Springs is, and I actually have been approached by somebody in the community that's interested in that. And their interest can't go anywhere with the city until the council addresses, do you even want to go anywhere with it or don't you, period, one or the other, so staff knows what to do. So it might be an issue that we have to.
Isn't it still illegal by federal law?
Yes.
Federal law.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
That's the answer.
that's one of the answers that's out there. Then the plans and programs committee for RCTC met on Monday. It's usually in conjunction with CVAC's transportation. CVAC canceled their meeting, but plans and programs didn't. And it met basically for one reason, and that was to recommend to the board to award an agreement with HDR Engineering for services for the Coachella Valley San Gorgonio Pass Rail Corridor Service Development Plan in the amount of $1,600,000 total, actually, $1,847,645,000. This is actually, as far as commitment is concerned, this is actually the first money that's ever been put into a rail program for out here. There's been a lot of talk about it, a lot of committee meetings on it, a lot of meetings that RCTC has had, that CVAG has had, that subcommittees have had, ad hoc committees. Sunline was very much involved in this. So this is actually the very first tangible thing that you can put your hands on, that this could be a possibility. So I wanted to bring that information to you also. Then I did go over to the SCAG meeting and voted for the city on their 4 little issues.
Who's the chair?
His name's Carl, I can't think of his last name. He at one point he was on the state board, so I do know, I can't think of his name. Sorry about that, I'm not, well, maybe he has to be here. No, this is just an abbreviated copy, I'll get it for you though. Okay, so that.
Do we have a local representative then?
I'm sorry.
Do we have a local representative then on there from the Coachella Valley? Is there?
Luby's
Luby's
still on there. Yeah, and Greg will still be on there, yeah.
Yeah, Greg was voted back on and
Yeah.
Mike Wilson.
Oh, okay, maybe.
It was Loopy and Mike, and it was 2 to 1 for Mike.
Wow, that's because Luby's been on there, so it's kind of strange that, well, no, to uproot.
Yeah, both Indio people.
Okay, and that's all I have, thank you.
Okay. Christie, Oh, Lee.
Just had IID, we had our board meeting, ECAC board meeting last night. There's quite a bit of solar power coming online this year, the end of this year, so they've got a lot of interconnect programs going on, bringing on solar, which most of the solar goes out of IID, but they're bringing that on nonetheless. A lot of these solar groups are paying for the cost to go online. One of the items is they agreed on a $9 million contract for all their tree trimming and substation landscape maintenance. And I tried to say, does that mean you'll put landscape on the substation at Adams and Blackhawk Way?
That you've been looking at.
That I've been working on for quite a while. Of course, that is not.
That's not part of the $9 million?
But no, that's just tree trimming, and for that, it's already there. So I would hope in our discussions with IID that we can emphasize landscaping at the substation at Adams and Blackhawk. But otherwise, one of the side issues regarding ECAC, currently I sit there representing City of Lakita along with Mark Weber. And I understand that Mark Weber's time is
It's up. Yep.
On the Planning Commission.
Yep.
So whether we want to keep him on the ECAC board and him not being on any commissions or boards for the City of La Quinta or not is something,
We need to address, yeah.
Yeah,
For a while.
he did.
Yep.
Right, he was on the investment advisory board for a while and now the planning commission, but anyway, that is something, but anyway, otherwise, IID seems to be doing well with a lot of new energy coming online. There is talk, IID, by the way, owns 20% of the nuclear plant, power plant in Palo Verde, outside of Phoenix. And they're talking about bringing some new power lines down from that area that will cost IID a chunk because of their interest in that power plant. And that is all I have, Mr. Mayor. We don't have a Desert Sands Unified School District meeting anytime soon. I don't know when the next one's going to be planned, if it's here in May or if it's going to be in June.
I think it'll be in June.
In June? Okay.
They had a nice function the other night over at Bermuda Dunes Country Club.
What was that?
The Desert Sands.
I missed it.
They were all there. It was good.
Yeah.
Enjoyed it. We had the chamber in the city's meeting this morning. I want to thank Les and Edie for doing an outstanding job. I was a few minutes late because I was with Frank and that, but they brought the chamber up to date as to what's happening in our community, and that is great. I think they appreciated it. It was a good report. Very brief as far as the chamber's input. Basically, they're focusing on renewals for the chamber and that, trying to maintain. They've maintained an average right now as far as membership is concerned, and they're focusing on trying to maintain this with their renewals and that. But basically, that was it. It was quite brief, other than our report from the city and that. As far as Sunline is concerned, just a couple of issues. We're dealing with that bus stop on Fred Waring, as far as the school is concerned, Summit High School and that. And they pretty much agreed that right down where Palm Royale comes in, and the bus will be right around the corner from that, will be just east of Palm Royale.
On Fred Waring? Or
on Fred Waring, yeah, on Fred Waring.
Good.
And that, so I thank Tim for working with them and that, and I think that was the agreement. I just couldn't get them to drive up Palm Royale to the school and that. They just wouldn't do that.
Kids can walk that
So
far.
they've said at least it's a lot closer than where they have to walk now. The other thing was just brief and that, and the taxi administration and that has said that they would maintain the rate per mile and the hourly wait time. They had issues, you know, during Coachella and Stagecoach and that, but they're going to maintain these things. I was a little concerned that they were going to try and raise it strictly because of the gas prices. It's really, when it really shot up, but they're anticipating that those prices will come back down. So they said that they would maintain their rates at the present stage, which is good. And that as far as CVAG is concerned, the executive board, I was kind of surprised, you know, the executive committee that was handling Tom Kirk's renewal for that. There was a couple of from Coachella and from Cathedral City that they wanted to get involved deeper in that, and they wanted to continue this to the next meeting. Why? I don't know, but the board said okay that they would go and extend it, but they his term expires the June 1st, and we don't have a meeting till after that. But
Really?
they said that they could extend it. So
Tom's done a great job.
well, I think so too. Why their complaints, I have no idea. But
He's gonna build a fence for us.
Right, Linda? Yeah.
I don't know about that.
You gonna take that one to the bank?
Yeah. And the SCAG elections, we just talked about it, Greg Pettis was, he had no competition, so he was automatically voted in. As far as Regional District number 2, District number 66, which includes Blythe, Coachella, Indio, and La Quinta, the candidates were Lupe and Mike Wilson, and Mike was appointed, so he's representing that committee. Katie Burrows gave a nice update on the plastic bag ordinances and that, and again, we haven't taken any action. Other cities, as you've seen, has taken action, and that whether we want to take an action on the thing or not, you know, it's up to the council whether they want to, or just leave it as it is. We're not forced into taking action.
State's gonna do something sooner or later, so.
Yeah, but I think there's something that if the cities have something in place that the state.
Well, we were kind of waiting for the state to see what they were going to do.
Yeah, well, that's not always one.
No, that's true. But that's all I had. And then, so we'll move on to department reports. So Frank,
Basically, we had one being the request from the Office of Military and Defense Services for Riverside County. They sent this correspondence in to the mayor and referred it to me about supporting the continued operations of the defense facilities or bases here in Riverside County.
I would recommend that we do this.
and I just said, let's let the council make the decision. So the recommendation is go ahead and
We got our
approve it
direction.
and put it together. Okay,
Thank you.
Good. That it? Kathy?
I'll be sending you a memo, but I wanted to just give you, alert you to the fact that the FPPC voted on in April to change the way they look at conflicts of interest relating to real property. And hallelujah, they got rid of the common area rule.
Really?
So that is out of it, so that you no longer use common area, your HOA common
Oh,
area.
Thank goodness.
Yeah, it's like, it's only taken, I don't know how many years. I think they got tired of writing opinions. There's some other changes that I'll go over in a memo, but I thought that was one that affected 4 out of 5 of you.
Well, the good news is, you know, we had a realtor that would help us out. Good. Thanks, Kathy. Susan? Department heads, anything? Okay. Seeing that, we'll move on to mayor and council members' items. Anybody have anything?
I would like to say one thing. During our recent city's birthday party celebration and the wins that came up, I think Edie and her team did a fantastic job bringing things into City Hall, and it looked like a great success, and your team is right on it. I just want to say great job.
Well, at 9 o'clock, it was beautiful. Now, it wasn't at 7 o'clock, but at 9 o'clock it was beautiful. But it was good that, yes, that they were able to make a change real quickly, and the staff did a wonderful job putting it together. Anyone else? Seeing none, then at this point, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
Moved and second. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. We're adjourned. Thank you very much for being here.